applicant. And once again, public comments will be limited to the 4 areas. Then questions from council, and then finally the matter will be referred to council for consideration and discussion. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize its presentation regarding the specific topics outlined previously. Staff?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. Anna Bertonzetti, Director of Planning, will walk us through a brief presentation on those 4 items. Anna?
Thank you, and thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. Again, Anna Bertonzetti, Planning Director. As was mentioned, this project is a continued hearing from January 26th. There are 5 resolutions and 1 ordinance to consider as part of this proposal. Next slide, please. As was summarized by the mayor, the motion to continue on January 26th was made and approved in order for the staff and the applicant to prepare additional information and complete a presentation regarding the specified items, which I also have on the screen and were previously summarized. In response to council's motion to continue and the request for additional information, the applicant did provide a response, which was included as attachment 1 to staff's memorandum. An addendum to the memo has been provided this evening with a draft party wall agreement that was provided by the applicant. Other than the information provided by the applicant as attached to the revised memorandum, there have been no other changes made to the proposed application. If I could have the next slide, please. In the staff memorandum, staff provided additional information regarding homeowners associations, metro districts, and party wall agreements. HOAs are neighborhood level institutions that make and enforce rules and covenants. Residents who purchase within a homeowners association automatically become members and are required to pay dues. An HOA is comprised of and run by the community residents. In addition to enforcing covenants, the HOA management may provide some additional services to its membership, including maintaining landscaping, parking lots, and swimming pools, and some also provide trash removal services. Metro districts are special tax districts. They're a form of local government. Metropolitan districts are pretty common in Colorado and have become more so in recent decades as urban growth has moved outside of the areas that could easily be served by the local governments. There are now approximately 1,850 special districts operating within the state, and there are 47 operating in Broomfield. Almost half of residential units existing in Broomfield are located within a metro district. Metropolitan districts are a financing tool used by commercial and residential development when a developer is building beyond the bounds of existing infrastructure and the nearby municipality has no existing budget or authority to extend services for that new development. In order to finance, develop, and maintain the infrastructure, the district imposes a special tax on the new development area in the area affected by that service and issues low interest bonds backed by the anticipated future revenues from the tax. Generally, the lower interest rates are able to be provided than versus private developer provided financing, and this lowers the cost of the district improvements. Metro districts may also be used for operations and maintenance services if that is included as part of the service plan. The map on the screen is showing different taxing areas within Broomfield as of 2020. So these include metro districts, special districts, and urban renewal areas, and a high resolution version of this map is linked in the memorandum. Finally, party wall agreements. These are also sometimes called share wall agreements, and they're a private agreement between 2 or more property owners who share a common wall or are in a single building like a townhome or a condominium. These agreements are recorded against the title of the properties and they're attached to the property itself, so not individual property owners. They're typically a standard agreement that's used for houses within the subdivision and established by the developer. Party wall agreements last for as long as the subject improvements remain on the property. Some of the primary purposes for these agreements are to establish rules and expectations regarding insurance requirements, repairs, maintenance, and modifying the shared property. The staff memorandum included 2 examples for existing party wall agreements in Broomfield, and the staff memo revision, as I mentioned today, includes a party wall agreement draft provided by the applicant that could be utilized for Dillon Point. The examples show how owners would be held responsible for following the party wall agreements. This concludes staff's presentation, and as was mentioned, the applicant also has a presentation this evening.
So then we'll proceed with the staff's, the applicant. I'm asking the applicant, and I'm pretty sure they know, to limit their presentation to the specific items mentioned earlier. Just as we encourage staff to keep their presentations brief, we'll ask the applicant to be concise in their presentation and to limit the presentation to the specific topics outlined previously. Will the applicant's representative please identify themselves for the record prior to beginning their brief presentation this evening?
Can we get the screen shared? Sorry, Josie, can you share the screen? There we go. Hello, everybody. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and members of the community. My name is Colby O'Haron with Wonderland Homes, and it's my pleasure to be in front of you again. We continue to be excited about this project and equally excited to be back in Broomfield. As you know, it's been a long road to get to this point, but we greatly appreciate all the time spent by many members in the community who've provided feedback, various meetings, several advisory committees, dozens of rounds of staff and referral agencies review to bring this project to the present. With the way the process works, we get limited time to discuss the project with council, so we appreciate the opportunity tonight. We're thankful to have narrowed the conversation to these last topics. Admittedly, we haven't done enough to clarify the neighborhood governance method we are proposing, as well as outlining the necessity of rooftop decks as they relate to the financial modeling for the project from a holistic view, rather than looking at them through a vacuum. We will attempt to focus on these topics this evening to show that we're able to address the stated goals outlined in the council priorities, housing needs assessment, inclusive housing ordinance, and the comprehensive plan with the help of these specific elements at Dillon Point. Traditionally, HOAs have been used to fulfill many of the responsibilities of a community. Then in 2004, the Special District Act was amended to allow districts to provide similar services. As you can see from the chart, there are a range of potential responsibilities to maintain the public improvements, enforce covenants that protect property values, and improve neighborhood aesthetics. The Metro District also provides a financing vehicle for public infrastructure that allows improvements to be paid for by those who immediately benefit for the length of time that they benefit. There's an extensive regulation for districts similar to those of municipalities, with residents being able to run for the board at the biannual election rather than waiting for a high percentage of build out before it's turned over to the end users. All records and meetings are public with requirements for annual filings. Broomfield is the governing body of jurisdiction, as districts are subject to comply with the terms and conditions of the approved service plan. There are many financial benefits to using a Metro District without an HOA. The taxes are split amongst the homeowners based upon assessed value, allowing lower priced property owners to pay less. These taxes are included in the inclusive housing ordinance calculation and may be tax deductible for some. Additionally, this method can help to avoid confusion between two entities and avoid sunk costs for administrative fees for two entities. Next slide, please. Oh, no. Yeah. At the previous hearing, we discussed placing a cap on the mill levy for maintenance and operations until the board is under control of the end users. This cap can be added as an amendment for the approval, the service plan amendment, if desired by council. This potential cap is one guardrail we can add. The currently approved service plan and proposed amendment combine to provide several other strong guardrails, including a cap on the debt service mill levy, a requirement for enhanced disclosures to be provided to homeowners regarding the district, and requirement of third-party municipal advisor that reviews and certifies that any debt issued is reasonable. It's very important to clarify a misconception on this district. The risk is placed on the bondholder, not the future homeowners. If the taxes collected are not enough to pay back the bonds, the length of maturity cannot be extended, and the taxes cannot be levied higher than the cap. The educated institutional investor takes this risk when they purchase the bonds prior to build out. Those of us fortunate enough to own a home know how special it truly is. The joys, rights, responsibilities of homeownership are a crucial part of the American dream. There's nothing that supports diversity, equity, access, and inclusion more than providing that opportunity to a wide range of buyers. Wonderland Homes has proudly been handing the keys to this dream to a wide range of demographics for decades. This history of experience has shown us that with intentional design, we can build attached products that function like traditional detached. We've applied this concept specifically to our architecture at Dillon Point. For example, the roofs on all attached units are independent systems with roof breaks between units. Without any shared components, each owner truly has their own roof. The siding and landscaping follows this same concept. The only component that is shared is the joined wall. Whether or not the neighborhood had an HOA, it would have a party wall agreement to provide a legally binding document that answers many questions you may have about the shared wall. Similar to maintaining a shared fence between traditional detached home rear yards, party wall agreements are necessary to decipher who maintains the shared element, who pays for the repairs, and what access you may have to make the repairs. The cost of homeownership goes far beyond the purchase price. Each element has been carefully constructed to keep as much money in the pockets of future homeowners as possible. To do so, you can't forget to consider each piece of the strategic puzzle to put together. We've carefully checked the boxes for abilities like covenant enforcement or providing strategic guardrails to the Metro District to ensure that Dillon Point will be owned and maintained for the long term in a manner that protects the investment of future homeowners and those surrounding the neighborhood. To understand the financial justification of three-story units, you have to take a holistic view rather than putting them in a vacuum. Over 3 years ago, builders and developers came to the Ouida family looking to build on this property. However, Ryan and his father had discussed the project with Broomfield, listened to dozens of hearings, and heard loud and clear the desire for attainable housing and the needs listed in the housing study and the council priorities. They did their research, and rather than pressing the easy button to sell the project, to follow the PUD with only large semi-custom homes, they reached out to us. Why us? Our Quail Creek project in Lambertson Farms was the closest thing to diversity of housing and meeting the needs of the housing study in Broomfield, while accomplishing those goals right across the street from semi-custom homes. With our positive reputation and experience in neighborhoods around town, it allowed us to look into alternatives on this site to accomplish many goals. Breaking down the intent of the PUD zoning in Broomfield Code is exactly the financial justification for these changes, as it discusses encouraging innovations, the best features of modern design, so that the growing demands of the population may be met by a greater variety in type, design, and layout of buildings, as well as a more efficient land use that reflects the changes that benefit those who need homes. The competition was planning to follow the 1994 PUD to sell 213 homes in the mid 700,000s on the property totaling over $155 million in total sales. We wanted to reduce the average price down to about $500,000 to fit growing demands. In order to implement this reduction and still stay competitive, the density needed to increase to over 310 homes. At Broomfield's Quail Creek, excuse me, we have similar products to the single-family detached alley and front that you see here in the third and fifth columns. With only these units, the average price would be close to $500,000, but our guidance was to include options for seniors, attainable price points, and a wide diversity of products. We added a senior targeted townhome, an attainable 3-story unit on the smallest lot size. In order to do this, we needed to balance the scale with higher priced homes that take up a smaller footprint. That's where a 4-story townhome came into play, which is much more efficient land use, using a special feature of modern design, a rooftop deck in Colorado. After the concept review, we took the feedback and reduced the townhomes to 3 stories with a stairwell providing rooftop access. Added an enclave of semi-custom homes, built a southern buffer, and preserved the 2 estate lots to transition the density as requested. Additionally, we heard the request to bring 12 total acres of PLD. We accomplished this goal in the addition of adding a buffer that doesn't count toward public land dedication. Then at the council hearing for the previous application, we were asked to bring deed-restricted attainable homes for families that comply with the new inclusive housing ordinance. We also heard the concerns from residents about proper transitions. We continue to modify the plan to address those concerns. We replaced 20% of the 3-story townhomes with 2-story units in the most strategic locations to provide better height transitions from the west. Additionally, this change included a new 3-bedroom deed restricted home, perfect for families. At the request of neighbors, we further widened the southern buffer, again without credit for public land dedication. We added a new west part to improve transition, allowing more breathing room, and add public land dedication. When this piece of land being discussed tonight was added to the Sheridan Hills PUD to make the Aspen Creek PUD First Amendment, it added smaller lots designed for families and retirees. Then a few years later, the rest of the PUD was amended 2 more times to address new market demands, including larger lots. Current market demands allow for rooftop decks and financially support smaller lots for seniors and deed restricted inclusive homes for families. I'm not explaining this to sell the project or to show how much work has been put in. I'm explaining this to show the financial modeling is done from a holistic view that must be taken into account when developing a diverse community like this, rather than the vacuum of one specific segment. During this process, through the years of change, we've maintained the goal of an average price near 500,000, excuse me. We took this pie and cut it many different ways. We could have cut it into 213 large pieces or 312 medium pieces. Instead, the result is 6 different sizes ranging from small to large that still result in the same total pie with about $155 million in sales. Given the holistic view, the total sales number is important. Not only do we want to increase revenue like any other business, but contrary to some letters, the Metro District does not reimburse us for all the expenses to develop the land. The total development costs for the project have increased to nearly $31 million. Most of these are public improvements. However, the Metro District's reimbursements are estimated to be about $9 million because of the mill levy cap. The other $22 million or so to develop the property and the cost to buy the land is our responsibility. In order to spread these costs out, we have to have at least $155 million in sales to adequately absorb the costs, along with the vertical costs, permit fees, and overhead. As you can see on these charts, the profit margin is consistent on the detached options. The lot size to sales price is very linear. Lenders are familiar and comfortable with these products. On the right are the attached units. If you were to look at the deed restricted and senior targeted townhomes in a vacuum, they would never obtain land financing. But if the 3-story rooftops can absorb more of those allocated costs, then we can make the deal work through individually, though individually they might not pencil out. The best example is the senior targeted townhome lots are almost double the size of the 3-story row home lots. However, their land value is approximately 65%. This is only accomplished if the 3-story townhomes on smaller lots can absorb a higher cost burden, which is done by adding a premium rooftop deck. I will continue to say that the 3-story rooftop is the key that makes it all possible. As you can see, both of these options take up a small footprint, allowing more room for open space, parks, and in this particular case, strategic transitions from surrounding neighborhoods. We have both of these segments in our library. Some have pointed out our 3-story townhomes at Station 53 in Wheat Ridge are 35 feet tall. However, those prices start even lower at $379,000. Either of these decreases in revenue would lower our total sales volume about $15 million. If we were to remove the rooftop decks, these units could not absorb the costs for both the senior targeted homes and attainable homes. We have spent time looking at how we can approach the heights allowed in the PUD while still being feasible. After doing some research and challenging our architect to look at various heights and measurements, we found a financially feasible way to match the 35-foot height restriction in the PUD for the 3-story unit other than the stairwell. This is the same way that Broomfield Town Square PUD is written for 3-story townhomes on Main Street, which directly border existing single-story homes. The proposed PUD says they're not to exceed 3 stories. Stair tower accessing rooftop decks may exceed the 35-foot height limit. Rooftop decks are not considered a story and are not allowed to exceed 35-foot and are allowed to exceed the 35-foot height limit. Building heights measured from average finished grade to top of parapet or roof peak. This would be a financially feasible adjustment to match the same restriction on the 3-story townhomes at Broomfield Town Square, if desired by council as an amendment to our proposal. To specifically respond to Councilmember Jezierski's question about the trade-off that justifies the need for the rooftop townhomes, this is the trade-off for roof access that encompasses less than 1% of the site. This request for additional height on less than 1% of the site with a huge number of benefits. benefits of modern design and innovation that allow for inclusive housing options and senior options. Also, more than 10 acres of public land dedication for parks and open space that would be required by the PUD if followed. The widened southern buffer, the commercial corner, the opportunity to age in place, the benefits of diversity, access, inclusion, and sustainability. The smaller detached options filling many missing middle gaps and substantial infrastructure improvements. I'm aware that Broomfield has some special projects in the works up north and down south. We're bringing these council priorities of affordable housing, diversity, equity, access, and inclusion, sustainability, economic vitality to the center of Broomfield. Rather than paying a cash in lieu and the majority pushing these affordability benefits to the fringes of Broomfield, we're doing exactly what was asked. We're integrating it into the core. Each development has been asked how they can contribute, and each site has a different set of challenges and gift. We look to the special elements of this site, which are access to open space, great schools, incredible views, to carefully balance the needs with using a holistic approach, checking each and every box in the best possible way. Thank you for the opportunity to address these last few concerns tonight. We're happy to answer any questions and provide any additional information. That concludes our presentation, Mayor.
Thank you. We will now proceed with public comment. There's quite a few people in the queue. This item has generated public engagement via email prior to the meeting. We have received public comment via email on the Broomfield Voice Project page. I want to assure the public that council has received and reviewed the many emails we have received on this topic, and we have listened to the public comment shared on January 26th. Broomfield welcomes public comments in many forums. To ensure council has the time needed to discuss this important topic, and considering this matter was continued specifically to gather more information on the specific topics outlined previously, similar to staff and the applicant's presentations this evening, tonight's public comments will be limited to 90 minutes total, as previously outlined, limited to the following specific items: homeowners associations, metropolitan districts, shared wall agreements, party wall agreements, height variance. Council requested additional information regarding the applicant's project, specifically regarding the financial analysis for the applicant's stated need for the proposed 4-story townhome product, 3 stories with a rooftop deck. We encourage you to share your thoughts on these specific items. If you have sent in an email or if your comment is the same as a previous comment, I'm asking you to please indicate your support or agreement with that prior email or comment and not repeat your entire statement. Again, we support the public comment and you have every right to share your thoughts. My goal in limiting public comment is to be consistent with staff and the applicant's presentation and be cognizant of time so that council can have the robust discussion and time needed and wanted by everybody to consider this matter. I appreciate your input, support, and help in this regard. If there's anyone who would like to be heard, please press *3, state your name, first, last name, and neighborhood for the record. And so let me go back to the first 15, and there's more than 15 in the queue. The first 15 will be limited to 3 minutes. The next 10 will be limited to 2 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and start with David. David, please keep your comments to the 4 items, and you have 3 minutes. State your name and address if you would, or your name and neighborhood.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, this is David Acton. I'm a resident of Aspen Creek. My focus tonight is on the supposed cost difference generated by the 40-foot tall townhomes. The applicant is anxious to show you that the rooftop patios are the linchpin to this entire community. They dedicated 7 of their 10-page response to this topic, but unfortunately the argument they make is disingenuous, misleading, and intended to confuse you. 2 weeks ago, the applicant said they'd earned $200,000 less for the sale of a townhome of the same size but without the rooftop patio. In their written response to you last week, they revised that number down to $135,000. In the letter that I sent to you, City Council, on Tuesday morning, I showed you clear evidence that their actual loss is $0. What's striking is that Wonderland never shows you any evidence of their price difference. They literally just throw a number on a sheet of paper. Rather than just taking their word for it, we asked the realtor to collect data on 59 home sales in the downtown Superior neighborhood from 2018 to 2020. This neighborhood contains the Wonderland townhome product they would like to build in Dillon Point. including the rooftop patio. It also contains similar 3-story townhomes from Remington Homes without a rooftop patio. These townhomes from these two builders are literally on the same streets and address the same market. Figure 1 in my letter compares the price per square foot of all the homes. It's a very revealing plot. What's remarkable is that the rooftop patio generates 0 extra revenue for these homes. In fact, the average price per square foot for the patio homes was 4% less than the homes without the patio. It's tempting to believe that the applicants claim that this luxury lifestyle element would sell for more, but the data does not lie. Home prices are always compared based on dollars per square foot, so this is the best way to look at it. But even when you just look at the size home Wonderland wants to build there, the data looks exactly the same. No difference in price. There is no reason to expect a different result in Broomfield. Residents in Broomfield are not going to value a rooftop deck any more than in Superior. In fact, you'd expect more of a price premium in Superior with the view of the Flatirons. So what this tells you is that Wonderland is not going to lose $135,000 per unit in revenue for these townhomes if they keep it at 33 feet. In fact, the data shows they may lose 0 revenue. Therefore, these 44-foot tall products cannot be what the entire project depends on. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, David. Timothy, you're next. State your full name, your neighborhood, and you have 3 minutes.
Timothy Davis, Aspen Creek. By the way, Mr. Mayor, my email comments were not placed in the Broomfield Voice website. I want to let you guys know that the 97th Colorado Municipal League Conference in June 2019 called Metro Districts a kind of regulatory Wild West. Reporter David Magoya of the Denver Post has written extensively about the problems of these districts and the bankruptcies inflicted on victims who bought homes in them. The development costs are paid in taxes rather than by equity and represent a never-ending lease payable at great cost to the owners forever. There is no limit in the MTD on the entities that can be bondholders and on any self-dealing with bondholders being on the MTD board for the purpose of increasing the builder's profit margin. Keep that in mind. In my opinion, we will see all those problems David Magoya talked about with the Aspen Street Metro Tax District. I am sick the city and county has permitted this project to even get to this stage with a corruptible MTD. If you vote yes, your good family name will be forever associated with a debacle that will unfold. Vote no tonight and in the future until the Metro Tax District run for the profit of the Ouida family is removed. Thank you very much for your time.
I do want to note for the record that Tim Davis's email was received by council, and I did read it when I received it. I don't know about the public record, but council did receive his comment. I want that to be noted for the record. Yolanda, you're next.
Mayor, before we want to note that the email is reflected. Comments are placed in the folder on the agenda. Comments are not placed on Broomfield Voice.
Okay, thank you. So there's the formal process which are on the agenda. So Yolanda, you are next. State your full name on your neighborhood, and you have 3 minutes.
Yolanda Del Toro, Aspen Creek. Dear Broomfield Council, I have concerns about the Dillon Point development and the service plan. First, the City Council should not approve the request to amend the service plan to allow the district to make improvements outside of the Metro Taxing District. The Metro Taxing District exists solely to pay for infrastructure improvements inside the taxing district and provide services for those residents. Why does the developer even contemplate making improvements outside of the district? For homeowners outside of the Metro Taxing District, neither Broomfield County or those homeowners should have to pay any fees or assessments from a taxing authority who has no authority to tax them. That is called taxation without representation. For homeowners inside the taxing district, they should be able to vote on whether or not improvements are necessary since they're going to pay for it. Again, this developer has no downside risk in creating Metro Tax District. If the Metro Tax District wants to perform any actions outside of its boundaries, it should go to the city and explicitly ask for approval of that action. They should not be granted a blanket authority to do so, and this amendment should be denied. Second, the service plan has way too many inconsistencies, and it actually needs to be amended put in guardrails to protect the homeowners, including those 32 deed-restricted homes. The developer's presentation did not tell you that the mill levies are, if the mill levies are not sufficient, the Metro Tax District can impose rates, fees, tolls, penalties, and charges as may be necessary. That's a quote from the service plan, and that's to pay the difference in taxes. Well, what's the Metro Tax District going to do? They're going to charge a toll so that you could drive on the road in that area or to park in the neighborhood street. What penalties or rates are they meaning to institute? And why aren't those examples or limits to those? Additionally, the service plan states that once the debt assessed valuation is less than 50%, they're permitted to impose a mill levy for the payment that is not subject to the mill levy cap. Finally, the service plan doesn't even mention a 19 mill levy for a general fund or a capital projects fund that was placed in a disclosure notice. Now, if the service plan doesn't talk about these two additional mill levies, then they're uncapped as well. Third, there's no HOA to exist to maintain the common areas. Instead, the development plan proposes a party wall agreement, and the developer even suggests that the party wall agreement is a guardrail to inform and protect the future homeowners. Actually, the guardrails need to be put around the Metro Tax District to avoid it fleecing the homeowners. The Metro Tax Districts, again, should dissolve after the payment of the improvements required to build the neighborhood. They should not exist forever.
Yolanda, your time is up. Thank you. April, state your full name and neighborhood for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is April Schofield. I live in Aspen Creek, and I'm speaking this evening about the financial issues surrounding the 44-foot townhome height. In their response last week, the applicant told you they need to charge $135,000 less per unit if they can't build a rooftop patio. Mr. Acton wrote a letter describing why that's just plain wrong. But what if you actually believe Wonderland? The answer is they'll simply lose some profit. It will not kill the project. Let's look at their presentation. Slide 11 tonight showed you that they will make a profit on every single one of their home types, except for the deed-restricted homes where they claim they'll break even. While the builder claims without the rooftop patio, the project isn't viable. They never offer any actual evidence of that. They talk a lot about the complicated planning and enhanced improvements they'll make. They claim the development costs rose over 60% since the concept review in order to provide great outdoor amenities. They claim to cover the heightened development cost. The 3-story townhomes must shoulder the cost burden. We are honestly shocked at the disingenuousness of this argument. The applicant conveniently forgets that it's the Metro District which pays for the improvement cost of this parcel, not the home sales. No matter what the developer spends on improvements, the Metro District assumes those costs and issues bonds to repay them. Then the homeowners get the privilege of paying back those bonds for decades. Not a single home sale will include an allocation to cover development costs. If it did, that would defeat the entire purpose of the Metro District. Even if every home sale has to contribute some money to cover the cost of the undeveloped land, there's simply no way that cost, when spread over 200 plus homes, would necessitate anywhere near a $135,000 price premium on those tallest townhomes. If Wonderland has to sell the townhomes without a rooftop patio for $135,000 per unit, the only consequence is they'd lose some profit. The project would still be viable. All land improvement costs will be paid by Metro District bonds and repaid by homeowner taxes. The applicant's own service plan shows they expect to issue bonds totaling over $37.2 million, well over the estimated public improvement costs of $24.7 million. What the builder just said about only being reimbursed $9 million is flat out wrong. All costs will be reimbursed. It will just take longer because of the debt levy cap. Please don't believe any claim that the 44-foot townhomes are actually needed to complete this project. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Amber, you're next. Please state your full name, your neighborhood, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, hi. My name is Amber Marilat. I live in Anthem Highlands. I was pleased to hear that the developer has been looking for more ways to compromise. After they gave their presentation, I did some of the research on the Broomfield Town Square project, and saw what they are referring to. It looks like an incredible project. I'm sure that you may face some of the same height concerns from adjacent residents as Dillon Point, especially with the 65-foot multifamily buildings on Main Street. But you certainly have my support. It is time for Broomfield to thrive, and I know that Baseline near me has heights over 250 feet tall, so it seems like taller buildings are the way of the future. We all need to start getting used to that taller is more sustainable. Adding a stairwell above an already allowed height seems like a pretty minor ask, so I'm hoping you move forward with this project as it is much needed in Broomfield. My only question for the council is about this request for financial justification. Is there financial justification for heights in Broomfield Town Square and Baseline and every other project coming forward? I'm surprised that a landowner and home builder provided as much as they have. In my opinion, they have taken some abuse with a lot of class, especially for a project that has checked all of the boxes. And no matter what happens tonight, they do have my respect and support. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Tara, you're next. State your full name, your neighborhood, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Tara Acton. I'm a resident of Aspen Creek. I want to spend a couple minutes today talking about the Metro District issue. We've heard descriptions of why Metro Districts can be risky to homeowners, but we understand this is how development is done in this era. So what's the real issue here? 2 weeks ago, many of you were concerned about the lack of guardrails on this Metro District. You asked for better assurance that the district would be in the best interest of the homeowners, yet the applicant spent one short paragraph addressing this topic. All they said is they'd put a cap on the operations and maintenance levy and give homeowners enhanced disclosure statements with no explanation of what that really means. Did that really give you any confidence? Metro districts present unique risks to a community. There are no restrictions on conflict of interest with the developer. There is no fear of financial liabilities. Developers can issue debt and then buy that debt in order to make money. In Adams County, one developer issued debt of $1.8 million at 9% interest and turned it into a $22 million payday for themselves. Who pays for that? The homeowners. There are no checks and balances to ensure communities won't spiral into insolvency. Years down the line, when the homeowners might manage to get on the Metro District Board, the damage is already done. This developer is likely to take specific advantage of the risks described above. The Ueda family is a landowner whose interests have always been their own bottom line and their own needs, and they've shown a pattern of disregard for established Broomfield rules and guidelines. I'm not saying they're fundamentally bad people, but all of their actions are always in their own self-interest. Why should we believe that they'll operate their Metro District in any other way? Also, the financial burden allowed by this district are particularly bad for the affordable housing goals. The number and type of levies described in their service plan don't match what's in their current disclosure notice. Their operations and maintenance levy is already twice what they projected in their service plan. What about other fees, rates, tolls, penalties, and charges? With all of this uncertainty, it's basically impossible for the affordable housing calculation to have taken them into account. A big red flag. In conclusion, there's a ton of uncertainty with this Metro District, yet the city is counting on it being a reasonable cost to homeowners so that teachers, firefighters, seniors, and first-time homeowners can live there. The guardrails suggested by the developer are far too weak, and you should be very concerned. Thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. Chris, you're next. Please state your full name, your neighborhood, and you have 3 minutes.
And I think the Chris you're referring to is me, Chris Whitty. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yes, you have 3 minutes.
All right, excellent. Thank you. So Chris Whitty, and I live in Country Estates, and I certainly want to speak out against the proposal. I understand the topics that you have limited me to discussing, and certainly the comments on the Metro Tax District are well-founded. It really is putting the fox in charge of the hen house. There's no doubt about that. But also on the concept of the height restrictions, really the hypocrisy of the Uedas fighting these height variances from all the homeowners around them for years, successfully fighting them over and over again, and now trying to violate them themselves is just outrageous. It's unfair. It's not something that should be allowed. The community's expectations for space and height requirements in the neighborhood are something that's well enforced. It's part of the intentionality of the people who have moved in to those neighborhoods, myself included. And I also want to object really to the idea that we have been restricted to only those topics. When the original motion to continue this discussion was made, it was made to discuss the commercial property on the corner, which of course I object to as well.
Chris, regardless, we're limiting you to 4 topics. So do you want to address those?
But from a procedural standpoint, that was the reason the original motion to continue was made.
Chris, we're not going to debate that right now. Do you have anything to comment on the 4? Can I move to the next person?
Sure. I would just like to say in closing then that we do think that the original single-family detached home zoning should be what is maintained, and I object to the proposal.
Thank you, Chris. David, you're next. State your full name and neighborhood, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I think that's for David Manley. That's
it
me.
Is for, yeah,
I live in Eagle Trace.
Yes. Yes. David.
Okay, and I live in Eagle Trace. I've been a resident of Broomfield for over 40 years. I was on the Housing Task Force when this project was first presented, and I was there between 2018 and 2020. I find it very disingenuous by all of the callers who call in and say that the developer has never made any concessions. The height or the 3-story townhomes is one of the areas they have made significant concessions by reducing the number of townhomes over time and moving them to the center of the project.
So, David, I'm going to ask you to limit it to
thing.
David, I'm going to ask you to limit to the 4 comments, to the 4 question areas.
Yeah, I'm talking about the height. I'm talking about the height.
Okay.
I'm talking about the height issues.
Okay.
So I think it's important to note that 2 things. One, the Broomfield City Center project has townhomes 3 stories and larger right across the street from the first filing. Those have all been approved and are anticipated. I would also point out that the trees on the Awida property are more than 50 feet tall. They are taller than the tallest part of any of these 3-story townhomes. It is disingenuous for anybody to say that that's a problem and they're opposed to the project. They're really opposed to the whole concept of this thing, the integrated project. So I'm very much in favor of this project, have been since it was very first presented to the Housing Task Force, and would like to see it done because I'd like to move to that particular area and stay in the Boulder Valley School District taxing area, which is lower than everything on the east side of Sheridan. That's the end of my comment. I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Craig Lamborn, you're next. State your neighborhood.
Yes, Craig Lamborn. I live in Lacamora. Longtime resident there. I recognize the need for change, especially for getting the much needed housing for seniors like myself or kids in our workforce. I wanted to call in and ask a question. It's probably going to be a rhetorical question because I don't think there's questions and answers here. But one of it is this project seems to be beaten up because of the variances that they're asking for the PUD and for the code. And my question would be, what other developments have gone in recently that have required variances, and how many variances? Is it equal to this, or is it more than this? I don't think this one's so abnormal. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Tom Capoletti, you're next. State your full name, your neighborhood, and you're limited to 3 minutes.
Well, Mayor Quinn, you already stated my full name, but I'll state it again. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Tom Capoletti. I'm a retired Air Force officer, and I'm speaking today as opposed to some of the previous speakers. I'm going to limit myself to the 4 items on the council's agenda. But I really don't care what people in Eagle Trace and Lacamora think. We live in Broomfield and Aspen Creek and part of a PUD that I signed a legal document to live in. My comments are regarding the 44-foot townhomes and developers claim that they're essential. We heard everything today wrapped in baseball, apple pie, and Chevrolet by the builder. Yet based on what they've said and what they sent you in the response last week, these people want you to believe they're barely making this project work financially. I don't believe it. You know, we can debate the numbers, but truth in lending, I don't think they'll have any problem making money on these houses. It's all about maximizing their revenue. They call it attainable now instead of affordable. Not only has Mr. Acton shown in his letter to council, which is part of the record, there'll be no difference in sales price between the townhome with or without a patio. The applicant has continued to boost its minimum revenue from the project since July. 2 years into this project, and at the July council meeting, the project consisted of home types. It showed a total of 318 homes and a minimum total revenue of $123 million. Fast forward 4 months at November, they dropped 4 homes. Whoopee. That's a lot of numbers. So you can look at figure 7 in Mr. Acton's letter, and I suggest council, all 10 members, review these hard numbers before you vote, and vote with Councilperson Lim and Councilperson Schaaf against this project. What's just as dramatic is how this builder's total revenue figures its revenue. The applicant likes to point out they're compromised, I quote unquote, since July by growing the buffer. People talk about trees. Well, I talk about a floodplain that was redone with FEMA's approval, yet specious numbers. Yes, they dropped 1.3% of their home sites. Simultaneously, they grew their minimum revenue by over 20% to the tune of $25 million. Looking at the pie charts, looking at the material we've sent to you, so why did the prices go up? Simple. The developer wants to reset their profit targets. The builder spoke today, not the developer. I find it very funny that Ryan and his classmates from Broomfield High School didn't chime in about, you know, once again, baseball, apple pie, Chevrolet, and living in Broomfield. It's not a birthright. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Kevin, you're next. State your full name and neighborhood for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, my name is Kevin Erickson. I live in Aspen Creek. I'm a commercial banker and have been for the past 20 years. I finance large commercial projects, including construction. And I reviewed the February 1st memorandum prepared by Wonderland Homes, in which they were asked by City Council to financially justify the need for the 4-story townhomes. Wonderland indicated they would lose $15 million of revenue if they didn't have the 4-story, and then further purported, for reasons not explained, they would also need to change the roof to a pitch roof and lose $19 million. Either way, at no point in the entire memo did Wonderland mathematically prove to you, City Council, that they could not do the project if they couldn't have their 4-story. Not a single dollar amount of expense was shared in that memo to provide that it would make the project non-viable. This is one of the points they were asked to clarify to you. And in 7 pages dedicated to this topic, they purposely chose to not share the expenses and failed to prove their need for the 4-story. My second and last point I want to make is the amount of emphasis that is being placed on those 4-story townhomes. Wonderland claims the 4-story townhomes provide, and I quote, as the financing key for the entire site. I have serious concern why development would place that much reliance on a single product type to carry the entire development. But since they have, we should be very concerned about approving this project as requested. If I were in your shoes, City Council, I would like to know what happens if this project, if the 4-story townhomes do not sell as anticipated, and we have a half-complete, non-viable project, which again are the words used by Wonderland. No development should be claimed to be needed to be propped up by a single product type. If that truly is the case, this project is a house of cards that runs too great of a risk of failure. I appreciate your time and ask you to vote no on this project as presented.
Thank you, Kevin. Jeffrey, please state your full name and your neighborhood, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Jeffrey Pitch, Aspen Creek, Broomfield resident for 25 years. My comments are regarding the 44-foot townhomes, and developers claim that these are essential to the viability of the project. Based on what they've said and what they've sent you in their response last week, these folks want you to believe they're barely making this project work financially. That if they don't get the rooftop patio, the project might just fall apart. I want to show you how far that is from the truth. Not only has Mr. Acton shown in his letter to council on Monday that there will be no difference in sales price between the townhome with or without a patio, but the applicant has also boosted its minimum revenue from the project since their July City Council meeting. At the July City Council meeting, the project consisted of home types and price ranges which were presumably designed to make the project viable. It showed a total of 318 homes and a minimum total revenue of $123.7 million. Fast forward 4 months, and at the November Planning and Zoning meeting, they showed a new table. They had dropped 4 homes, but now have a minimum total revenue of $149 million. That's a lot of numbers. So you can look at figure 7 in Mr. Acton's letter to see how the starting price range shifted. Previously, a large majority of the homes were expected to be in the $300,000 to $400,000 price range. Now the home prices have shifted dramatically to be more expensive. The biggest percentage of homes now sit squarely in the $500,000 to $600,000 range. And remember, these are the starting prices. What's just as dramatic is how this affects the builder's total revenues. The applicant likes to point out that they compromised since July by growing the buffer along Starview Drive by 30 feet, which caused them to lose 4 home sites. Yes, the dropped 1.3% of their home sites. Simultaneously, they grew their minimum revenue by over 20%, which is $25.2 million. If you look at the pie charts in figure 9 and 10 in the Acton letter, you can see a net shift of 112 homes from the under 500,000 starting price to over 500,000. Over 1/3 of the housing went from somewhat affordable to no way is that affordable. A full 61% of the homes have a starting price above 500,000. Don't let them tell you these prices went up due to the increased project development costs. Because remember, the Metro
Jeffrey, your
District,
time's up.
all of that was on debt. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for the record, so everybody knows, I'm told that Robin is caller number 12. So that means her and then 3 others will be allowed 3 minutes. So Robin, state your full name, your neighborhood, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Robin Kenningham. I live in Aspen Creek. And hello, Mr. Mayor and Council. I think we're 2+ years into this, and I appreciate everyone listening and being here. In our last meeting, one of the council members, and I believe it was Ms. Castriata, stated that 85% of the homes in Broomfield were in a special tax district. I spoke with the assessor's office today, and actually they've been working on this information diligently. And they told me that the accurate number is 49% of homes in Broomfield are in a special tax district. So I think that's important to point out. I bought in Aspen Creek, and I looked originally in the Broadlands because it was not a special tax district. I did not want higher taxes. At the time that I bought 18 years ago, our HOA was $25 a month. It's currently $60 a month. So I think that's important to point out as well. Also, it was just brought into my attention, and I think this is important for everyone to know, that Wonderland has been bought by a builder from Texas.
So
the builder, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
So Robin, that's not one of the 4.
I think it's important because
Robin,
they were talking.
you can talk over me. I'll just cut you
Wonderland,
off. That's not part of the 4 subjects.
Wonderland talked about themselves and the community and their reputation.
Okay, that's not one of the 4 subjects, Robin. Do you want to go back to one of the 4
Okay,
subjects?
they've been bought out, and I think it's important everyone knows. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Art, you're next. Please state your full name and neighborhood, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, well, thank you. My name is Art Nobles, and I'm a 20-year resident of the Broomfield Heights neighborhood. I'm in favor of the Dillon Point Aspen Creek development, and I do acknowledge that it's not a perfect development, but the development has many positive aspects. In particular, I like the availability of the lower income housing which I don't believe there's enough of it in Broomfield. And I think the mayor pointed this out, that many council members seem to be somewhat against this aspect of development, although they ran against that moderately priced housing availability as a part of their most recent campaign. It's really a chance for them to meet that commitment that they made. Now, to facilitate the management and resident supervision of the development, the plan calls for metropolitan districts instead of HOAs. Metro districts have been around for a long time in Colorado, well accepted, and they're an effective way to manage and maintain housing areas and provide for a method of financing for lower income residents of neighborhood improvements. In fact, I believe the city of Broomfield in its Broomfield Town Square project will include a metro district. Other aspects to provide lower income housing, such as the height of the apartments, rooftop decks, party wall agreements, seem necessary to me to allow the development to make it economically viable for the development to provide moderately priced housing in Broomfield. Finally, as I've followed this development over the years, and I mean years, I have found that the WIDAs have been very accommodating to the city. And they've been changing this plan to meet the city's wants time after time. And I believe now is the time for this project to be approved.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Art. Mark, you're the last caller to have 3 minutes. State your name, neighborhood, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Mark Stussy. I reside at Aspen Creek. The lack of an HOA concerns me. City staff has already researched in all Broomfield's existing metro taxing districts that they have that they all have HOAs, especially those involving townhomes. The proposed development does not. As a former HOA president and board member, I personally know how hard it is for members to abide by the rules. Dillon Point, without an HOA, and especially those homes with shared walls, will have a tough time maintaining a desirable look. What will this development look like in 10 years? HOAs also provide its members a way to voice their concerns and manage issues. Just having a metro taxing district alone and only having the developer's family members and lawyer on the metro taxing district board, to me, sounds like a community run without representation and fraught with legal potential problems. I also understand the metro taxing district is asking for the ability to expand its district beyond the proposed development. Council, please ask the developer and help me understand why, to me, this sounds very sneaky and should be considered very concerning to neighbors and council members. A previous caller also mentioned that there are 50-foot trees on that property, which I personally love, and the wild space and the open space. But I mind you, a 44-foot building on an 80-foot rise as you guys go up northbound in Sheraton, northbound in Aspen Creek, that is a 120-foot rise, line of sight. So in comparison, just imagine Holy Family High School there on that property. So it will definitely destroy the views. For these reasons and previous reasons stated by community members, please vote no on this proposed development and stick with the original PUD. Council members, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark. John, you're next. State your full name and neighborhood, and you have 2 minutes, John.
2 minutes. Okay, here we go. John Cunningham, Aspen Creek. I bought here in 2002. My wife and I was a land development manager for one of the area's larger home builders. My wife, a real estate broker with 30 years experience. We decided on Aspen Creek over the Broadlands, mainly due to the Metro District and the fact that our builder, Genesee, was building here. We'd had lots of experience with them over the years. They were a great builder. Guess what? Our taxes are much lower than the Broadlands. My actual experience from a developer's viewpoint is Metro districts are really just financial opportunities for developers without the financial ability to carry out a project on their own, to pass on those development costs to the buyers over many years with tax increases rather than absorbing those costs in the first place. This method gives Wonderland or whoever's buying the lots, cheaper lots. It gives more profit for both the builder and the developer. And the tax increase over the years, the district mill levies on top of the Boulder County mill levies are going to be increasing. I just don't understand why you would go along with something like that. It makes no sense at all. Thank you for your time, and hopefully we can get this resolved this evening. Bye.
Thanks, John. Rebecca, you're next. Please state your full name for the record, your neighborhood, and you have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Fauteur. I live in Aspen Creek, and I want to talk about one critical issue on the Metro District topic. Tonight's agenda includes an amendment to the Metro District Service Plan that presents significant risk to nearby communities and is unnecessary. Developers asking for the unilateral ability to finance, construct, acquire, install, maintain, and operate public improvements outside their district boundaries. Why on earth would they need this? All the district's functions should be confined to the Dillon Point neighborhood. They absolutely need to explain what they would do with this power. Could this amendment allow them to buy property in Country Estates, Aspen Creek, or the Broadlands, operate that property in some way that supposedly benefits those neighborhoods, then try to use that as a justification to expand its boundaries and begin charging fees on those neighborhoods? Could the fact that they're using the Aspen Creek PUD make it easier to consume other Aspen Creek filings? You should be very concerned about this request. We've spoken with several developers and people that are knowledgeable about metro districts, and they think this is very unusual. You should not allow this amendment unless it comes with very explicit limitations to protect nearby communities. Better yet, deny this amendment and force the district to come back to the city at some future time if they want to procure and operate such property, and provide sufficient justification at that time for why that should be allowed. The potential abuse and lack of guardrails in this metro district are bad enough to the future homeowners of Dillon Point, but it would be even worse if it could spill over into nearby neighborhoods as well. We're relying on you, our elected officials, to recognize this risk and address it. And in conclusion, I just want to say that I am against this project as it stands, along with 570 other folks.
Thank you, Rebecca. Your
a
time is
petition against the 44-foot. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenna, you're next. State your full name and neighborhood for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Brenna Wattrey, and I live in the cottages at the Broadlands. A few of the callers prior to me have actually made some of my points, so I'll try not to repeat them too much. I would like to start out by saying that a few of the people who've spoken before me have been touting HOAs as though they are a perfect solution. And my HOA is fine, but my sister down in Aurora pays like $300 a month for an HOA that barely does anything for her neighborhood. And I want the council to keep that in mind, that HOAs aren't always as great. The other thing I want to say is with regard to the height of the townhomes. I'm actually fine with leaving the townhomes at the height proposed by the developer. I believe they pointed out in the presentation on, I think it was January 26th, that reducing the height of the townhomes doesn't actually represent a significant improvement in the view for the surrounding neighborhood. I'm in the cottages. I live like directly to the east of the proposed development, and the land does rise pretty steadily. And as I think one of the callers pointed out previously, all it takes is a tree to block my view. So keeping in mind that the intent was always to build on this land, I don't really see that it makes much of a difference if a small percentage of the houses are a little bit taller. And I also want to add that as a younger home buyer who was in the market a few years ago and owns her own home now, the rooftop
Hey,
deck
Brenna,
is really
your time is up. Thank you. We'll go to Kirsty. Kirsty, state your name, full name, your neighborhood, and you have 2 minutes.
My name is Kirsty Lockhart, and I'm a resident of Country Estates for the past 12 years and a resident of Broomfield for over 30 years. I oppose this plan. I believe that the developer is being disingenuous in saying that this plan was created to balance the needs of affordable housing and other space considerations. And I want to note for the council that this developer did not submit a plan for affordable housing with the concept review in 2018. So it's difficult to see how this holistic plan originated from
Kirsty, can you keep to the 4 subjects?
Yes, I want to talk about I oppose the Metro Tax District, which sounds rife with fraud and opportunities to overbill the residents and make the housing a lot less affordable. Additionally, the height, the 44-foot height, a lot of residents aren't keeping in mind that this is right across from horse property. It's right across from Country Estates. And the commercial property is also right across from people's driveways in Country Estate. In Pony Estates. The Broomfield Comprehensive Plan is supposed to provide for integration and unity of the neighborhoods. Goal LUC specifically provides for residential neighborhoods to continue to encourage and support community of neighborhoods containing a variety of housing types, but while maintaining existing single-family residential areas of Broomfield. And this area of Broomfield is on the land map as single-family detached homes. That's been the expectation for over 20 years, and it is what the community bought into with their expectations. I oppose the plan as stated, and I thank you all for your time.
Austin, state your full name and
Not
neighborhood.
that I've lived in this shithole since 2002.
Well, who is this? Is this Austin?
Oh.
Yeah. You're on. So and you're being listened to.
Oh, all right.
And your 2 minutes have started. So state your full name, your neighborhood. Okay. Go ahead.
I'm Austin Cook. I'm from Aspen Creek. I'm speaking tonight regarding the lack of an HOA in this project. At the January City Council meeting, many council members expressed concern that there would be no HOA for Dillon Point. I share that concern. The developer proposes that we trust that the Metro District will take on the functions of an HOA because it will save the community money. I don't buy that argument. The developer wrote a multi-page letter to City Council addressing Council's concerns. Nowhere in that document do they show a savings for the community residents without an HOA. Metro districts are typically run by management companies just like HOAs. The OWIDAs are not going to be managing the day-to-day operations of the Metro District from Arizona. Why did they not present side-by-side numbers on the fees for residents if an HOA were present and different? Maybe cheaper numbers with just a Metro District? I assert they didn't show you the numbers because there really is no state cost savings. HOAs are nonprofit entities whose costs are designed solely to benefit the community. Metro districts are corporations whose financial decisions have no requirement to be made in the best interest of the homeowners. Additionally, Metro districts and quasi-governmental corporations entitled to governmental immunity in most situations. If the OWIDAs are employees of the Metro District, they will have immunity of many of their decisions and therefore cannot be sued. Broomfield staff confirmed that there is not a single townhome community in Broomfield that does not have an HOA. Let's not start with Dillon Point.
Okay.
Thank you for your time and service.
Thank you, Austin. Thank you, Austin. I think it's Cece. You're next. State your neighborhood, and you have 2 minutes.
Hi, thanks for your time. My name is Cece Susi, and I live in Aspen Creek. And I have a concern with the revised agenda item 3A regarding the party wall agreements and the developer asking council to approve a draft with only 4 hours of public notice. And this being a quasi-judicial process, I ask that all council members to verbally certify tonight that you've not discussed this project verbally or in writing, including text, with any other council person, member of the public, including the developer and builder, and people for or against the project or the media. And I'm just curious, can each of you certify that tonight?
Cece, I don't see that you're talking about the four subject. Do you want to talk about the four items subject?
Well, that was the party wall agreement, but yeah, I'll go on. I just wanted to bring that up. But I do remind you all, at the last meeting on January 26th, 8 members did have issues with the height, and 7 members voted against this. So I'm just wondering why we're even having this discussion and why this hasn't been pushed back to the developer to make the changes, these 4 changes plus other ones that we have been discussing for years now. It seems egregious to me. So anyway, that's it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Cece. Jeff, you're next. Jeff Ryder, Rader, you have, I've stated your name. Tell me if I did it right. Give your neighborhood, and you have 2 minutes.
You did. Thank you, Mayor. I'm Jeff Rader, and I live in McKay Landing. I'm calling in with my support for Dillon Point. There are many reasons for my support, but tonight I'll speak on 2 of them, which regard financial justification. First, economic vitality has a community-wide financial implication. The current PUD is 27 years old. The world has changed. The city itself has changed. If Dillon Point is built under the current PUD, does that equate to the city being stagnant?
So
why not make Broomfield vibrant by modernizing and growing the city to meet the current and future demands of residents and businesses? The community as a whole will thrive.
Jeff, I need you to address the 4 issues that are at hand.
I'm addressing financial justification.
That was on specifically regarding the height?
No, justifying why Dillon Point's good for the community as a whole, financially.
That wasn't the 4th item. The 4th item was the height, allowing the 4th story for the height. Do you want to address that?
Oh, that's fine. I'm in support of the project. I think the height's just fine. I think the communities since this PUD was created have changed, and I think it attracts a diverse mix of housing and lets people believe in the dream of home ownership. So I support the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Jason, you're next. You state your full name, your neighborhood, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Jason?
Jason Schofield. Yes, can you hear me?
I can. You have 2 minutes.
Can you hear me?
I can. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Jason Schofield, Aspen Creek. Calling again to just show the not the pushback of the development, but it has to do with the 44-foot development piece and how it relates to the several variances that it's not living within. I know there's many board members, and there's a demand for the city to increase inclusion and affordable housing, and I feel like that can be addressed. And the community has offered to meet those opportunities. But what we're asking to do is to live up to the variances that you clearly have an issue with as far as the community. There's not one person on this board that can argue. I'm talking about the 44-foot variance. Like the 44-foot variance is the sticking point of the community. It's probably the biggest concern, the biggest frustration. And so for the city to still get what they want out of the development, they can, if they ask the developer and the family to live up to that variance code, which is clearly important to your community. So I ask that you live by that. You do not allow that variance. You hold strong to the PUD on the height restrictions. It's a very key point to the community. And if the value of low-income housing is important, you have a community that is here not pushing back against that. I find we can find a way to work together to make that happen, but I don't think it needs to come at the cost of the community that is clearly strongly showing their voice against this variance. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Jennifer, you're next. State your full name, your neighborhood, and you have 2 minutes.
Hi, this is Jennifer Dulles calling in from the Broadlands. And I'm at home, not feeling so well after having a second shot for shingles. So I will be very quick. I work with metropolitan districts, and I am not in support of this, and I have a lot of concerns. I do reputation management and public relations and have been hired by metropolitan districts in the past. So a great deal of familiarity with them, and I am opposed. As it relates to the variance on height, I guess my general feeling is if the design of your community is incumbent upon variances, then and you're stating that that is a financial need, then the reality is you have a poor design. So, this community needs to be designed in accordance with what the community has planned for. So, thanks so much, and appreciate your time this evening.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. John, you are next, and you're the last one to have 2 minutes. I don't see anybody else in the queue, so I might give the very last one 2 minutes. So, John, you have 2 minutes. State your name. It looks like you're a non-resident, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John Henderson. That's correct, non-resident. I work with an organization of over 60 residents throughout the Front Range who are concerned about Metro District abuse and promoting reform at the state and local level. Let me just address a couple of myths that have been promoted here. Lower costs of infrastructure. Page 3 of the service plan references reimbursement agreements. What that means is that the developer will enter into an agreement with himself to make a loan to the future residents at an interest rate. Page 12 refers to an 8 to 10% interest rate. That loan will carry for as long as the developer wants to. Before the residents get on the board, he will cash that loan out with a second loan, which is a bond to bond investors. Second loan, a second set of interest, paying interest on interest for the first loan. There's no way when you do the math that metro districts lower the cost of infrastructure. The way you lower the cost of infrastructure is to build it into the cost of the developed lot. And we found in many districts, they do that too. So they double bill. They bill you for the infrastructure and the cost of the developed lot, and again, with the metro district. ULI did a seminar about 1.5 years ago explaining that metro districts were created not to pass the risk to the bondholders, but to pass the risk to the residents because of the bankruptcies that were happening in the 80s. And that's what the bonds tell you too. The bonds advise the investors on how to or whether to initiate property forfeitures in order to secure the value of the bond. The people that carry the weight.
John, your time has expired. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to cut off comments. We only have one more on the queue. So I'm going to go ahead and give Brendan, who's not a resident, 2 minutes to speak. 2 minutes to speak. So state your name. And I note that you're a non-resident, and you have 2 minutes.
Yes. Hi, Brendan Buchanan, non-resident. I've called in previously. I'm a teacher, so that's part of the reason why I'm calling in. I wanted to echo one of the other callers in support of this project's point that the PUD is 26 years old, and in terms of the 44-foot height requirement, communities change, the needs for homeowners change, and as a younger homeowner, those aspects of the project appeal to me, as well as the non-HOA. I currently live in a building that has a $270 a month HOA. And in terms of a metro district, I feel like they can do, as with the right management, can do what a good HOA can do. And with 48% of Broomfield communities under the in a metro district, they all can't be bad. So under the right management, I think this could be a viable project. So I just want to speak in support of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. That concludes public comments. We're going to go ahead and go to the applicants. Whether the applicant wants to make any comments on the comments they've received from the public, now would be the time for the applicant to respond.
I appreciate that, Mayor. I'll make a really brief comment, and then I'll hand over the mic to Jennifer Gruber Tanaka from White Bear Tanaka to discuss a lot of the Metro District concerns. We realize this is an emotional topic. Anytime you include housing in schools, you get emotion. A pandemic adds even more to that. Change is a tough pill to swallow, and it's scary, and we really respect and understand and recognize the strong opposition to this change. These goals of affordability, sustainability, diversity have been in the plans in each comprehensive plan from 1995 to 2005 and 2016. There are many people who have been working very hard to implement these goals, most of who are on the citizen committees. Wonderland Homes has been implementing these changes in Broomfield step by step for decades, from the cluster homes you see in Red Leaf to the smaller lot and alley options in Lambertson Farms. You have our commitment to implement this next step of change in Broomfield. A PUD is not meant to sustain the test of time. It's meant to be adapted over time as development standards are needed, to be a catalyst for diversity, sustainability, affordability in the heart of Broomfield. Regarding the comparison at downtown Superior that was mentioned a couple times, I'm not going to comment on the Remington Homes product there, however, I'm very familiar with it. A price per foot comparison of larger homes to smaller homes is not an accurate approach. What I do know is there's two derivatives of our rooftop townhomes that we're proposing in Dillon Point. We build one at Station 53, which does not have a rooftop deck, and those are at $379,000. We also have downtown Superior versions that pricing is 2 years old, and our average sales price out the door was $650,000. And so you can see the price discrepancy between those two is rather large, especially considering one is modern and the other is 2 years old. I appreciate the time, and at this time, I'd like to pass things off to Jennifer Gruber Tanaka with White Bear Tanaka, if you don't mind.
Thanks, Colby. Thanks, Mr. Mayor, council members. A couple of points that I just wanted to touch on that were raised by the public comments. One person noted, or actually a couple people noted, that the public improvements are located outside the district or being financed by the district, and expressed some concern with regard thereto. The only public improvements outside of the district's boundaries that we will be financing are connector improvements. So for example, some improvements to Aspen Street, connecting water and sewer lines to existing water and sewer lines provided by the city, and connecting sidewalks so that they connect with neighboring communities. So that's the extent of the public improvements outside of the district's boundaries that we will be financing. Dovetailing with that, the district cannot tax outside of its boundaries. And so we can only tax the property located within the district's boundaries for those improvements. So any misconception that the district is able to tax outside of our boundaries to any of the neighbors is just misplaced. We're prohibited from doing that by law. With regard to the board composition, I just wanted to note quickly, I am personally not on the board, nor are any of the developer attorneys on the board. That was stated a couple of times at the last hearing as well as tonight. So I wanted to just dispel that rumor. It's just not true. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our two financial advisors for the district to touch on the financial comments and questions that were raised. The first person is Brooke Hutchins at D.A. Davidson, who is our financial advisor for the district. And the second is Jonathan Hero at Piper Sandler, who is the district's municipal advisor, who has a direct fiduciary duty to the district to ensure that the district is getting the best, most favorable rates and deal and for the best interest of the district. So Brooke and Jonathan, I'll tender it over to you.
Brooke, we can't hear you.
Brooke, we can't hear you.
Sorry about that, I'm on mute. Thank you, Jennifer, for handing the mic over. I appreciate everyone's time this evening. I'd like to address a few of the comments raised tonight. And first, I'd like to say that overall, the benefit of a metropolitan district is that it can fund infrastructure at the time the infrastructure is needed to be put in the ground at a lower cost of capital than would otherwise be available. So early stage bonds that fund infrastructure at 5 to 6% tax exempt versus alternative financing vehicles that might be available, such as equity or taxable loans that are 12 to 20% kind of rates. So that is an important component of what a metropolitan district does. I'd also note that the metropolitan district only reimburses for infrastructure that is actually put in the ground and certified by a third-party engineer. And so those costs are actually borne for constructing the roads, the streets, the sewers, all the public improvements that are necessary for the development. Second, it is, I think, a little confusing to see in the numbers, but I'd just like to explain that although the total bonds shown in the financing plan have about $24 million in par together, that between the two, they generate $14 million to fund infrastructure. So what's the difference between those two numbers? It's that the second bond transaction that we have shown in the financing plan is actually a refunding of the first. So it's paying back the first debt. And that takes about $12 million to make that refunding occur. So that's the difference between the two. In total, that $14 million in net proceeds compares to something like $23 million in costs. So the Metro District isn't refunding all of the public improvements, just a portion. Lastly, there was a comment that the mill levy would go forever or wouldn't ever be terminated, and that is not true. These bonds are anticipated to have a discharge date. After the discharge date, the bondholder takes all the risk of the bonds not repaying, and the district is no longer required to levy its mill levy. So there is a limit, both in the cap of the mill levy at 50 and in the term of its imposition. Finally, I think some of the comments seem to imply that these bonds would be sold to the developer. That is not the plan. The plan is to sell these bonds to third-party institutional investors, high-yield municipal bond funds, names you might recognize yourself, Nuveen, Goldman, BlackRock, those kinds of investors who are sophisticated and understand the risk they are taking. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Jonathan to address some of the questions regarding rate and assurance that the district has financed appropriately.
Thanks, Brooke. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jonathan Hiru, and I work with Piper Sandler. We're based in Denver. We are an underwriter and municipal advisor to the municipal marketplace. On this particular credit, we are serving as the municipal advisor to the Metropolitan District. And under the SEC and MSRB rules, which govern the municipal marketplace, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the district. And what that means is we are brought in most often because the service plan requires an independent third party to look at transactions like this and make sure that the structure of the transaction, the covenants associated with the bond issue, and the interest rates are appropriate and on the market. So there may have been some questions throughout this process about perhaps the interest rates would be too high. Maybe one comment about just the overall interest rate market in the tax exempt space right now. We are at incredible historic lows. So for districts who do want to borrow for new capital projects or to refinance existing debt, there's no better time than the current time. As we said, part of our role is to watch the process, work with the underwriting, the legal team, the financing team to make sure that the interest rates that the district receive are appropriate. And when we say appropriate, what we mean is that they are comparable to other startup or brand new districts that have similar characteristics to this district based on the number of homes, the absorption, the build out. And we take our role obviously very seriously because we do have to follow very stringent regulatory requirements for this. We have worked with this existing financing and legal team on many other transactions throughout Colorado. Feel very confident this transaction will be well received by the marketplace and will receive very attractive interest rates. Thank you.
Any other responses from the applicant? Okay.
That's good, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Council, your questions and comments on these 4 items only are next. I wonder if it doesn't make sense to go ahead and take our 10-minute break right now. And I see a couple people nodding, and so let's come back at 7:45, and we'll then start with questions and comments. And Council, I'm asking you to keep it to the 4 items at hand. And as we agreed on Saturday, we will then When we're done with the question and comments on these 4 items, we will then go to our discussion of the resolutions and ordinances later on in the meeting. So 7:45.
The Access Live event is in music hold.
And Mayor, I reckon we're finished for tonight. The CRL folks.
Yes, you're finished. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mayor.
And,
It's
yeah,
been
thank
a
you for your
pleasure to
efforts.
serve the Broomfield City Council.
We're going to keep the developer on though, right?
No, the developers are. We're just getting rid of CRL. No, the developer better stay on for sure. No. Everybody who spoke from the developers should probably be on hand when questions come from City Council.
Hey, staff.
So we need to make an announcement.
What's
Can
that?
you guys hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure you could hear me, so when I come back, you'll hear me.
We hear you perfect.
Thanks.
Mayor, we do need to make, for those folks, some folks are called into CRL and are listening, and when we cut CRL, they'll also be disconnected, so we need to make an announcement to those folks with the number. Doug, are you still on?
Yes, I'm still on.
So we need to let them know what number they can call in and listen to the rest of the deliberations.
So Mayor, do you want to, I can just bring us off music hold. You can make that announcement, and then I'll just end the Access Live.
Mayor, I'm going to text you exactly what the options are for them to tune in, okay? Mayor, is that you?
So Doug, are we on music hold right now?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, and I think, Jennifer's talked to you, but just got, I will announce, ask people that, because there are still 17 participants, which is interesting. I will ask them to move over and let's give them 10 or 15 minutes. Doug?
Yes, Mayor. So you want me to take us off music hold and
Well, no,
announce that,
wait
or-
till, we're going to come back at 7:45, so I'm just touching base with you. So at 7:45, take us off music hold. I will then announce that those participants on, I will point out to them that, that CRL, is an additional cost, and there's other ways. Jennifer's already sent them, there's other ways for them to listen in or watch.
Okay.
But I was just thinking, if you cut them off immediately, then, I'm just saying, I'm not necessarily going to announce this, but give them 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay.
To figure out what to do.
Roger that. So we're going to come off music hold. You're going to announce it, and then after about 5-10 minutes, I'll end the access live.
Exactly.
Sounds good.
So it's a plan, at least.
Hey, plan's good. You gotta plan your work. You gotta work your plan.
There you go. Okay, Doug, go ahead and pull us off.
All right, Mayor, coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Music hold ended.
Okay, everyone, we're welcome back from our break. I'm noticing that there's 17 participants that are on the CRL, the call line, the 855 line that we announce all the time. We use CRL for public comments, and for those that are on the 855 CRL line, there are other options that you can go to learn, because I would like to to limit our expenses and let CRL be done this evening. So if you're on the line, you can go to broomfield.org/live or Channel 8 Comcast, or just go to the website. And if you go to the website, go down to council meetings. You can click on live. So in a few minutes, we're going to end the CRL line, but we certainly want you to listen to the rest of the discussion and deliberations, because it's of concern to all of us. So with that stated, I'm going to now go to, I'm going to go to council questions, to staff or the applicant on the 4 items, and raise your hand and you'll have your 5 minutes. Councilmember Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll just jump into the questions. First of all, is for the future home buyers, what disclosure will be provided to both the new home buyer and the home buyer's mortgage loaner of the annual property tax due to the Metropolitan District over the life of the bond?
I can take this one. Thank you, council member. We have included in the First Amendment a form disclosure notice that includes information on the taxes that are anticipated to be charged to and paid by homeowners. That is a form that the city has approved in other applications for service plans and has been using. It does require purchasers to sign that disclosure. So they get that first, as they're buying that home, they do get that disclosure notice and all of that information. As far as subsequent buyers, there are notices that are also recorded on the property. We have notices, similar notices with similar information recorded that will come up in their title work, as well as they will also have, of course, normal information and the Division of Local Government, recorded notices pursuant to Title 32, and, you know, obviously any other information that they would like to have, we are certainly happy to have provided to them. We also will provide an annual report to the city that will contain information that it has access to them as well.
Okay, I guess maybe my question wasn't clear. So will this show the life of the bond or the annual property tax due to the Metropolitan District over the life of the bond, or just the approximate tax when they buy it?
Right now, the form disclosure only has the anticipated using the maximum mill levies since bonds have not been issued. But we certainly could provide updates, you know, as bonds are issued.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you. So in comparison between the HOA and the Metropolitan District, it mentioned garbage cans was something that is provided, or not provided, but this is a piece of that both HOAs and Metropolitan Districts can have, but a Metropolitan District provide. So my question is, can a Metropolitan District provide a unified garbage collection service to all the future residents?
Yes, this is a new power for districts that we can provide waste management either through a contract with an outside provider or through our own services as well.
Great. When we talk about the party wall agreements, we've talked about the roof replacements, but how would common assets such as plumbing, electrical, foundations be covered by the Metropolitan District?
There's no common plumbing, electrical, things like that in the units per se. The units each have their own 1 hour wall in between the attached units. And so one resident's plumbing and electrical resides in their side and the other units reside in their own side.
And then the foundation itself, that is shared?
There's a property line, so that party wall foundation is a wider foundation, and the property line actually goes right down the middle of the foundation.
Okay, but if the foundation fails, it's going to be split between those two homeowners. That's
correct. If it is on that party wall.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because, yeah, thank you for clarifying that. So in addition to the district's property taxes and the operations and maintenance fees, are there any other fees collected by the Metropolitan District, such as a transfer fee, a development fee, a capital facilities fee, or a working capital fee? Are there any other fees that they would be paying besides those property tax and the operations and maintenance fee?
The district does not currently have any fees, and there are no plans to impose any system development or one-time fees for pledging toward the debt. As far as any future operational fees, there are no plans for that either. The anticipated mill levy is planned to cover all of those expenses. In the event that it would have to go above that, that's when the board would have to make that decision as to whether to impose additional fees to cover any operational expenses. But that's not planned right now.
Okay. This is a question about the district elections. When will those take place and how long are those terms?
Yes, this is a great question. This is statutorily governed. We have biannual elections. So the next election will be 2022. We are in a weird change right now where we're changing from 4-year terms to 3-year terms in order to get on a different cycle per legislative change. So the next terms in 2022 will be 3-year terms. After that, they'll be resumed to be 4-year terms. And then, so anybody that is an eligible elector can run in 2022 for any of those positions that are up for election.
And you said that that's statutorily set. So that is by the state. So that couldn't be changed to a different year or a different month on those elections.
Not absent a legislative change.
Perfect. Thank you. And then, so there's been mentioned by the public that there was a 60% increase in the development cost budget. And this has to do with that, with the height on the townhomes. Can you explain what that 60% increase in development cost was?
The 60% increase in development cost wasn't specifically tied to the height in the 3-story row homes. We had preliminary estimates, and as you probably know, construction costs across the metro range are rapidly increasing. And when
The Access Live event has ended. Thank you for calling. Goodbye.
Sorry, when we did our estimates originally and had some bids put out, since that time frame, basically over the last year and a half, the costs have increased 60%.
And that's the cost of the construction for
all of the infrastructure.
Units. For the infrastructure or for the units?
The infrastructure.
Okay. Okay. Which and all that infrastructure would be paid by the Metropolitan District, not the units price, the for sale price on the units.
That's not completely accurate. Some of it gets reimbursed, but not 100%. We have nearing $30 million in total development costs. And I think what we just heard Brooke say was there's about 14 approximately that's reimbursable.
Okay.
And I'd kind of refine that a little further. So our first issuance is generating about $9 million, and then there's a refunding, and that sort of is a way to look at the total capacity of the district over a longer time period. But the ability to issue that debt is contingent on interest rates and market appetite and all sorts of things. So it's $9 million upfront with another, call it $5 million to follow if all the stars align for the district.
Okay. I know my time's getting short, so I better keep moving. We've heard the 4-story townhomes are needed to support the 32 deed restricted homes. What is the loss on those deed restricted townhomes versus the non-deed restricted townhomes of the same size?
The deed restricted townhomes don't necessarily have a loss, but they're pretty close to break even. And it's the 3-story rooftop rows aren't just supporting the attainable townhomes. They're also supporting the larger lot senior targeted ranch product that we have across the community, which actually sits on 2 times the size of lot. So if we look at it from a lot square footage perspective, we have a ranch single-story townhome that's in the mid to high 300s. However, not supporting as much sales price as needed. So they're supporting both the ranch townhomes as well as the deed restricted townhomes, which are the deed restricted townhomes are approximately about a break even.
Okay. And then I just have 2 more questions. So with those deed restricted townhomes, what government subsidies or discounts will the developer receive from the city and county of Broomfield for including the deed restricted townhomes?
It's my understanding, and staff can probably better answer this question, but my understanding is there's a reduction in the building permit. I believe it's a 50 or 60% reduction in building permit, which equates to about $5,000 or $6,000, I believe.
Great. And then my last question is a question from one of the residents. Does the walkout deck on the 4-story townhome factor into the open lands calculations?
It does not.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have. Thank you so much.
Okay, Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I have a couple, first of all, a question related to the height. Like this has been going on for a while, that all parties have been aware of the 33-foot height restriction on the current PUD. This history has been rehashed many times. And this is the question that I've been curious about is we continue to see these 3-story units with the roof access, which are, not the 3 stories is not much above that 33 foot and probably could be built within the 33 foot height. So is it possible to build those units at 33 foot height or right about there without that walkout and without putting on the sloped roof? Can you just simply build a 3-story unit at about 33 feet?
Our current townhomes that are 3-story with a pitched roof that exist in Wheat Ridge right now measure 35 feet in height. However, Wheat Ridge measures to the midpoint of the roof, so not to the ridge. The difference there is then we lose the ability for those homes to garner an increased sales revenue to support the other components of the project that are suffering.
Okay, thank you. So is it just the limitation on the product that Wonderland Home builds? Because there are some builders that build 3-story units with flat roofs. So is that just something that you just can't? Wonderland Homes just cannot build. That there's no.
It's not cost prohibitive to build a flat roof on a townhome in general. When you don't have the rooftop deck, which the flat surface is needed underneath it, the costs grow exponentially from a pitched roof to going to a flat roof. So even if we were to do a 3-story townhome, we would not put a flat roof on it.
Okay, thank you. And I think the part I'm struggling with here is that there's a profit built into each of the home styles except for the attainable homes. So I guess the other question isn't quite about height, but can the senior targeted townhomes, are they restricted to just seniors, or are those like available for the first eligible home buyers?
They're not restricted to seniors, but that segment we build elsewhere around the metro area, and it has 3 of the 4 plans are all main floor living. Granted, we do get demographics from empty nesters to move down buyers, single parents, single couples. So the demographics are pretty wide and they're not restricted.
Okay, thank you. And then there was a question that was raised about, and this has been, Ms. Tanaka clarified it regarding, it was a amendment A, replacement of first and second paragraphs of section IA2. That's the part that says, no, notwithstanding the foregoing that that certain things we construct outside the boundaries. Can that language, if approved, be modified to somehow indicate that those are just those connector improvements and that this would not be something far removed from the project? Could that language be modified, or is that just standard language?
It's standard language that we have in service plans. We certainly could note and tie it to the anticipated improvements that we are planning on. Obviously, if there are any improvements that the city would like to see or others, including residents, would like to see in the future, we would be limited. But it is standard language that you see that districts are permitted to finance within and out its boundaries, and of course, just tax within its boundaries.
Okay, and I think I'm just looking there for something that would, some kind of guardrail on it to say that this is as far as it would ever go, that it's not going to go into another development, or there is no further plan there, I think is, if there's something we can add there.
There are also some securities limitations as far as what we can finance through the district as well. It has to touch and concern our district and benefit those that are in the district. So we do have some limitations there that we have to comply with. We have a whole bundle of different laws outside of Title 32 that get invoked, securities laws, tax laws, et cetera. So when we go to issue those bonds, we have to show that we're benefiting our district. So that's something to keep in mind as well, that there are guardrails in place, even if they're not specifically called out in the service plan itself, they're called out through other areas in the statute and constitution.
Okay, thank you. And then my last kind of set of questions has to do with the, this concern of whether or not we need an HOA or if the Metro District is sufficient. And I think one of the biggest concerns I've heard is that when there's a shared wall agreement with an HOA, there's a mechanism by which they all routinely put money aside and build up that account for when they need it. So, and I know that people are signing into an legal agreement, but there are some individuals are more likely to diligently put that money aside and be prepared for when the big maintenance item comes, and others may not be. So I guess, and I did see that draft party wall agreement, but I kind of came late and I have not had time to actually review it. So I'm just curious. What happens? This is on both sides for the homeowners who want to redo their painting and have these upkeep. They want to keep it going, and then for somebody who doesn't have that money but is being forced to do it, what does that legal how does that legally play out to make sure that we're not putting either side in a bad position?
The party wall agreement would exist whether there was an HOA, a Metro District, or none of the above. Anytime we have touching walls, we need to have that document in place so that there's a clear understanding what's done. we are coming at this from the approach and have in past projects that a homeowner in an attached unit has just the same financial abilities to save money and have pride of ownership that a detached home does. And so a typical event in a homeowner's major repair, when we talk about a roof, there are typically a lot of roof replacements in Colorado, and the majority of the time they're done by insurance. And so we think that the people who live in an attached home have just as much financial responsibility as those that live in a detached home.
Okay, thank you. And then I think Councilmember Schaaf touched on one of these. We're trying to think of the places where I appreciate that the roofs are not attached and that the units that the walls are separate and they have their own electrical. And I think the foundation becomes one which is not as greatly is likely to fail, at least for a long time down the road. But what about a situation where the failure of one unit, and maybe this is becoming too hypothetical, but just it's just this question that's kind of going on out there is what happens if the failure of one owner to like upkeep his roof resulted in water damage to a shared wall or something? Just that would all just, you don't see that as any different than under the HOA, because we're assuming that everyone is going to do their required upkeep and have set aside that money. Is that kind of the theory there too? Anyways, that is all. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Lindstedt.
Thank you, Mayor. I only have one question, and it's tied to the height variance. My one question is, in the Aspen Creek PUD plan, how many variances were identified from the original R1 district, and were any of these variances related to height? And that, I guess, would be for Ms. Bertanzetti.
Hi, this is Susan. I'll jump on the variance comments. There are two variances to height. There is the one variant that is the maximum height from 33 to the 46, and that is from the BMC or previous PUD code. The second height is again the 33 to 35, and that is for the single family detached medium. The third height there.
Councilmember Lindstedt, were you referring to the original PUD?
The original PUD, in the original 1990, well, not original, the PUD from 1994.
Thank you, Councilmember. I do have that information.
Good.
With the comparison, when the original Aspen Creek amendment that included this area was approved, there were 27 total variances. When the original plan was approved, it was divided into different areas, similar to how we have different house products with this proposal. And so there was a height variance for areas A as well as for area B. There were also some other areas, but so there were 2 height variances requested. And then again, like I said, a total of 27 variances if we were to count them for all of the different areas.
I think that's very important context. That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Lim.
This is for the applicant related to the financial analysis of the need for the height variance to 44 feet. You were asked to provide the financial analysis for the applicant's stated need for the proposed 4-story townhome product. You provided no expenses. You provided a 5-page text with half photos. I expected a spreadsheet showing expenses. There's only one accountant on council, but I think all of us could have looked at a spreadsheet. And that's what I expected to see as financial justification. We didn't have anything about land or infrastructure costs or anything in order to justify this. Can you explain why you didn't give us a spreadsheet and include, or at least include expenses in the text?
I apologize, Councilmember Lim. Our thought and our understanding of the request was more based upon the overall revenue assessment of the community as it relates to higher and lower participating segments.
Okay. You stated that dozens of additional new trees are planned with a variety of widened sidewalks to improve the pedestrian conditions within the site. And the development cost budget rose over 60% as a result of improved amenities, additional public land dedication, and the general increase in most construction-related costs. Again, you provided no financial data to show that those items like a dozen trees and widening the sidewalk amounted to 60% increase in approved amenities. Why don't we have numbers to justify those kind of figures?
Once again, I apologize for not providing the spreadsheet. We were trying to be as thoughtful as we could with not getting into the weeds that much. The project has been bid. We've had both 3-party bids, as well as we've gone back and added 2 bidders to each line segment. I don't have the land development budget in front of me, so I apologize. I'm not going to speak intelligently on each line item, but parts alone are almost $3 million in funding. So there was a combination of cost increases, and the cost increases came from added trees and added amenities in park and wetland enhancements, in addition to just general cost increases, which have been a pretty significant issue in construction across the country, not just in Denver.
Okay. My next question is related to the memo stating that the Metropolitan District can fulfill the roles of the HOA. So there's a table included in the memo. Staff provided information to us that we have no such situation in Broomfield, where there's a Metro District without an HOA. What is there in any legal agreement that's coming before us that would hold this Metro District accountable for providing the services that the applicant's attachment says the Metro District would provide? It claims it would provide it. Is there anything that we have as council to hold the Metro District to what it is promising?
Jennifer?
Thank you.
Thank
Yes. Thank you, Council Member Lim. Just to answer that question, it's not typical that you have in the service plan mandatory language with regard to that. What happens in the situation where the district enforces the covenants is that the covenants and declarations themselves name the district as the enforcement agency, and then the district then enforces those covenants and design review criteria. I have not seen yet where there's been a concern with a district failing to do that and there being a mandatory requirement in the service plan. We certainly could address that or include it into the IGA as well, that the district will provide those services. I don't see a reason why we wouldn't be able to address it there. I just have not seen it done. It's not become a problem yet. I have several districts that do provide those functions. I have several districts that have actually assumed the functions of an existing HOA because the residents have not wanted to have the dual functions out there, wanted to consolidate those services into one agency. So happy to address that if you feel that that would be give some comfort to the city.
Okay, my last question is regarding the late sent party wall agreement. So we requested that party wall agreement on January 26th and we received it this afternoon. So I did not have a good chance to review it, but I did look at one particular item. The staff had given us the party wall agreement for the villas at Arista and Baseline Villas. And I was particularly interested in the one comparison. So the party wall agreement that you sent says, each owner shall maintain the exterior of its unit in a manner that is generally consistent and harmonious with the exterior appearance of the adjacent unit with which it shares a party wall. Is the language generally consistent and harmonious? Is that something which would stand up in court? Is that what you're proposing, that a resident in this area would use as a party wall agreement?
Councilmember Lim, I can jump in on this one. This is Ryan Awida. Also in that agreement, it references any potential design review criteria or covenant enforcement of the district. So in that case, for example, a district could be the one that enforces those covenants or creates a design review for that, or the city of Broomfield following codes as well.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, Anna, I understand that you want to clarify a comment that you made earlier.
Thank you, Mayor. And this is in regards to the number of variances that I quoted for Council Member Lindsted's question. I think I said 27, which is the number of variances requested this evening. It is 14 as a total number of variances from the original. And I feel like I said the wrong number and quoted this applications. It is 14 for the original. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to correct that for the record.
Thank you. Councilmember Jezierski.
Thank you. I'm going to be brief. I do want to thank the applicant for the information that they did present today. Unfortunately, I have to agree with Councilmember Lim that the numbers provided really didn't help me one way or another, that they really weren't specific enough, but I do appreciate the effort on that. I'm sort of torn here. I'll just let you know that I understand the residents' concerns. I also understand the argument that you're making with what you provided. Just holistically, how you need the higher townhomes to offset the lesser costs for your senior housing and the deed restricted. The question I have, just looking at the diagrams you presented, is I'm just trying to see if is there a kind of a sort of a happy medium here? Is there any way that you can take your 3-story with rooftop and make it smaller? Does it have to have the pitched roof on there? Can you have a flat roof that brings it down to 40 feet as opposed to 44 feet?
Thank you, Councilmember Jezierski. In my presentation, I mentioned a compromise of matching the town square PUD height limit. Typically, that stairwell is not included because it does not include living space. So the stairwell is not included in a height limit. We would need to lower our parapet walls to match that limit of 35 feet, and we are willing to do that.
So I'm not entirely familiar with what you're talking about. Could you just sort of walk that? So the total would be 35 feet, or what would be 35 feet?
As it's written in the town square project PUD, it's the top of the parapet wall, so the wall that surrounds the roof.
The wall that surrounds the roof.
If I can jump in, Councilmember, yeah. The idea is that the building itself would be 35, and then you have the stairwell, only the stairwell that could be taller than that 35 feet. So the parapet wall is the wall underneath the railing that you're talking about, that you see on. So that would be 35 feet for the whole building other than the stairwell access.
So would the stairwell access look similar to what we're seeing on the diagram here?
Yes, it would. So there is no living space. I've met with Broomfield's chief building official, and there have been some comments that have been made that there is living space, and they're comparing it to our downtown Superior product. We originally started this process with that product having living space on the roof, but that takes us into a commercial building code. And so as the code is written, that space up there is solely a stairwell and a landing.
Okay, so I guess what I'm confused with right now is what you're proposing. How does that differ height-wise with what is in the? So right now we have the 3-story with rooftop that you provided last week, and now you're proposing something that's a little bit different. I'm confused as how they how do they differ height wise? I mean, the one that's in the packet shows a total peak of about 44 feet, right? With the pitched roof.
That's correct.
So what's what you're proposing now, what you mentioned now, how does that differ?
In order for us to match that PUD, we would have to lower that parapet wall just over a foot.
So I mean, bottom line, how tall would it be, you know, at the peak of the roof again?
The peak of the roof would remain, the peak of the roof for the stairwell would remain the same because that's not classified as a story. The top of the parapet wall would end up at 35 feet high.
However, if I can jump in, Councilmember Jaworski, the answer is that we certainly can lower that building by having the ceiling heights in the other floors be lower, for example. And the question is, it goes back to having a quality product. I mean, it is 1 or 2 feet if we're to drop that. For example, the senior house that's also adjacent to Aspen Creek has a 42-foot height restriction. We could get to 42 feet even for that stairwell. It's just going to lower the quality of the product a little bit.
Do you have to have that pitched roof? The pitched roof seems to add 4 feet. I don't know if that's an aesthetic thing, or I think you mentioned before that the pitched roofs are for some reason less expensive than a flat roof. I'm not sure why, if you could explain that.
Just the cost per square of roofing materials, flat roof is exponentially greater than a pitched roof. It requires more weatherproofing because you get snow that just sits on it instead of actually sloping off and rain sloping off. We could lower that pitch. I believe that pitch is a 412 and the minimum we would probably want to go is a 312. So how much that would take off, I don't know. But to Ryan's point, I believe we could get to the 42 foot. We would have to make some adjustments in the height levels of the main rooms. And in the great room of that building, its uniqueness is that it has 10-foot plate heights. And so you don't feel like you're in a townhome when you're on the main level when you have a 10-foot plate. Anything that we remove from that removes the luxury component of the product.
Is that you're referring to the third story there? Is that right?
No, the third story is actually an 8-foot plate. The first story is 9 foot. The second story is 10 foot. The third story is 9 foot as well. So the entry level is 9 foot. The living space is 10. The upper level is 9 foot where the bedrooms are. And then that stair tower is just an 8-foot high plate.
How much more expensive is it for you to build the pitch roof versus the flat roof?
I can't quote the exact costs. I mean,
approximately.
We do flat roofs in a lot of locations, and I'm going to say per square, it's probably $200 to $300, and it's probably more like $900 to $1,000 for flat roof per square, and a square is 10 by 10.
So this is I mean, I have no idea how big this roof would be here. It looks like, I mean, I can't even guess that. So are we talking a few $1,000s difference?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't have the exact numbers. It's 2 to 3 times as expensive as doing the pitched roof.
If you brought a flat roof down, can you make it to like 40 feet on these?
I don't believe so. I'm just looking at the plate height here, and the header height looks like it's at 40 feet there, where you see the top of the door and the window.
Right.
One thing I can't go below is that door is at 6'7", or I'm sorry, 6'8", and so that door is a minimum height. And we can't shrink that any lower.
So what would they, if you had a flat roof, what would they bring you to? 41 feet?
Yeah, it looks like it would be about between 41 and 42 feet.
So you'd save a few feet if you're able to do that?
Without changing any plate heights, yes.
Right, and then, as you mentioned, changing the plate heights could bring it down a little more as well.
It just changes the feel of the product, you know, especially on the interior units. When you have, you know, an interior unit that just has front and back windows, having a 9-foot ceiling in the living room is less voluminous than having the 10-foot. It makes a big difference.
Okay, now, I get that. I'm just trying to figure out a way if we can bring this down a little bit, and maybe everybody is a little more happy. So I will chew on that, but if you're, you know, I guess what I'm hearing is that you can bring it down with the flat roof at least to 41 or 42 feet, which saves a few feet overall. and potentially a little bit more, you could bring it down, it sounds like, but you potentially would lose some the feel or the quality of the product, it sounds like.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hinkle.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I had my video off just because it tends to glitch lately and is distracting to others. So I just had one question, and maybe Ms. Tanaka, you can answer this. I just wanted to, reiterate to people who are calling in about, the board just sort of raising taxes all the time without any say from the home buyers. And so it mentions it in the attachment 1, talking about the tiered mill levy cap. And I wholeheartedly want this. So we heard, the desire for that. And I just wanted to have you explain it just a little bit more in detail with the tiered mill levy cap of 20 mills to the service plan as a protection for homeowners. So if you could just explain that to people so that they understand what that means, that would be really helpful, since I think it's a newer idea with the Metro Taxing District.
No, absolutely. I welcome that opportunity. Yes, as those who have participated in this before will recall, the current service plan does not provide any limitation on the operation and maintenance mill levy at all. That's common for other districts within the city and county. In response to the concerns that were raised at the last hearing, we offered up to put in this tiered approach that would cap the operation and maintenance mill levy at 20 mills for so long as there are developers essentially controlling those decisions. Once we have residents on the board that constitute a majority of the vote, the residents could vote to change that mill levy so that it could go beyond that 20 mills. That would then take into account if they wanted to do extra holiday lighting or plant some more trees or do some other improvements within the community. They would have the flexibility to do that if they wanted to, but it would require a majority of the people on the board being residents that cast those votes in order to roll that cap off. So while the developer is in control or is on that board and constitutes a majority of those votes, it would be limited to 20 mills.
Thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess it's my turn. I had went through your proposal last Friday and written an email with quite a few questions that I'm fearing didn't make it to you. I put a question to Jennifer and stuff because it was my intent that that be published and that it be put to you because going back to Councilmember Lamb and Jezierski's comments, I am a CPA. I'm still an active CPA, and so I did some spreadsheets because that's what CPAs do, trying to understand exactly what you were trying to recover with the rooftop units because I am concerned about the height limitations a lot. And so, I mean, I tried to determine, once again, because you didn't give us any numbers, so I created some of my own on the sales prices. I came up with approximately $160 million of revenue, 10 million of revenue coming from the deed restricted ones, and I try to estimate based on the 1 to 2 story ones that what market value we're leaving off the table. So I had troubles with the numbers throughout, and the other part that I'd mentioned is that. Wonderland, my understanding is that you're writing this on the cost stuff. You're writing this based on a fixed land cost being paid to the WIDAs, correct? I mean, you're assuming that the WIDAs, you have an option price for the WIDAs, and that's a fixed land cost that you don't break out for us. And so part of my question on Friday, and I spent an hour and a half on Friday before I retreated because I was hoping you get these questions earlier. But so part of my question was the applicant here is the WIDAs. And when you give us your cost analysis, or at least that's my understanding, who owns Aspen Land LLC. And so when you give us all your numbers, you have in there, you have this blue line. I'm a CPA. I'm involved in cost allocations, have been my entire career. And I wanted to break out between land costs. I think you indicated that of your vertical costs or your horizontal costs, there'll be 30 million. 14 will be reimbursed. So I think you gave us a number of 16 million right now of your horizontal costs that are going to be that need to be recovered through sales, and then you have your obviously your vertical costs, which are directly related to each one of the properties. And so I struggled with your numbers, and I do to this point because for all I know, 50% of the costs that are on there are being paid to the UITAs and Dillon Land LLC. So I have real concerns over the information we got, and I guess I feel bad that that I certainly let staff know throughout the last week, last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, my desire to understand your numbers, and including spreadsheets. And so I guess I think I didn't ask a question there. I'm going to leave it at that. That I didn't consider your information to be adequate. And so, Mr. O'Haron.
Thank you, Mayor. If I may address that, the difference or the problem with us submitting a spreadsheet with all of our costs is that they're proprietary. And if we submit all of our land development costs and fees and expenses for this project, they become public. And I've got competitors out there, just like any other builder. And that's not a typical practice for us to submit a complete spreadsheet of our business pro forma for the project. And so I apologize that you didn't have enough information or didn't have the information that you needed or requested. I just wanted to bring that up because it wasn't because we were trying to cloak something. We were basically just those proprietary costs to us and to our business.
And I understand that, but I'll save it for my comments. But the bottom line is, it was impossible for me to look at the text you gave, your graphs, and for me to determine how much that, like I said, 50% of the cost that you have could be paid to the UITAs. Correct?
It's not.
Well, no, but I'm just saying to you, but I don't know that, do I, Colby?
Right. No, I completely understand. I mean,
Okay.
like I said.
So I'm just gonna leave it at that. I guess I'm sorry that those questions didn't get put to you. But I think it goes without saying, because you're saying even if we had asked for the detail, that you probably wouldn't have provided it because it was proprietary.
I mean, probably not to the level that I believe that you're requesting. We might have been able to explain things a little bit better, a little bit in more detail. Our thought was that the request was just a high level overall sales price buffering between the product types that exist on the community, because the comment that was made was specific to the row homes and it didn't look at the project as a whole. And that's how we perform the project.
Yeah, unfortunately, Colby, I look at your answer as a CPA, and so it was at such a high level, it wasn't very helpful. I'm going to go ahead and go to Mayor Pro Tem Castriotto.
Thank you, Mayor. So I remember one of the callers asked about the height justification that we're requiring of this project, and they mentioned the town square heights that were how high, Anna, Ms. Bertonzetti?
Thank you for the opportunity to address. We are still working on the first review for the Brimfield Town Square. I believe what was referenced was the PUD plan that's been proposal that does include some rooftop patios. That has not been brought forward to the City Council. There are multi-story buildings, so honestly, I don't have that PUD handy in front of me, the draft PUD, but there are 4- and 5-story buildings for the non-row homes. So I would believe that there is the 3-story townhomes with a rooftop patio with a stair access. But I don't know the details of how they are proposing at this time to measure their height.
But do we normally require a justification from the developer of warranting that height? Because
yes,
it's going to be very...
Each PUD plan in Brimfield is intended to be a unique zoning district. So as part of the process, we will be evaluating their proposed heights for the entirety of the project as well as for the townhome component.
Because yeah, I'm reminded of the one I think we all approved unanimously in baseline. And how tall was that height variance that we all approved?
It is, I believe, a 200-foot for the entirety of the project, where the mixed uses, the heights are reduced as you are west of Sheridan. And there are 3-story townhouses there with rooftop decks with a similar stair access in those areas as you're approaching the community ditch near Anthem. Those are the lowest heights.
So up to 200 feet is what we all approved.
West of Sheridan, there are areas that are allowed to be 200 feet, yes.
All right, thank you, Ms. Burton-Zetti. That's all.
Okay, are there any other questions from council? Because I'm about to close the public hearing. So I am going to close the public hearing. There will be no further questions from council. The public hearing before the city council is closed. The next step is council's consideration of this matter. Please note, council is not limited in their discussion to the 4 specified topics for this evening. Council's consideration covers all information in the record, including the information presented this evening, as well as at the January 26th public hearing. Council's deliberation of this matter can be grouped. Therefore, I'm going to have the clerk read the proposed 6 resolutions first, followed by the reading the proposed ordinance. Will the clerk please read proposed resolutions number 2020-239, 2020-240, 2020-241, 2020-257, 2020-272 by title.
Resolution number 2020-239, authorizing and approving the 7th Amendment to the 2016 Comprehensive Plan Land Use Map, PUD Plan Amendment, Final Plat, Site Development Plan, and Subdivision Improvement Agreement for Dillon Point, Aspen Creek filing number 8, continued from January 26th. Resolution number 2020-240, approving the First Amendment to the Service Plan for Aspen Street Metropolitan District and providing other details in connection therewith. Resolution number 2020-241, approving an utility easement grant to Aspen Street Land LLC to use and occupy city-owned open space on a portion of the Woodage open space. Resolution number 2020-257, authorizing and approving a memorandum of understanding regarding the attainable housing for Dillon Point, Aspen Creek filing number 8. Resolution number 2020-272, authorizing and approving an intergovernmental agreement by and between the City and County of Broomfield and Aspen Street Metropolitan District.
Will the clerk? Yeah, will the clerk please read proposed ordinance number 2142 by title?
Ordinance number 2142, authorizing and approving a vested property rights agreement for Aspen Creek filing number 8 and designating the vested property rights agreement, the Aspen Creek PUD Plan, Amendment 4th Amendment, the Aspen Creek filing number 8 Final Plat, the Aspen Creek filing number 8 Site Development Plan, and the Aspen Creek filing number 8 Subdivision Improvement Agreement as site-specific development plans with extended vested property rights pursuant to 24-68-1042 CRS and Chapter 16-40 BMC. First reading.
Okay, so I'm going to ask for a motion, and this motion is to deliberate on the Dillon Point, Aspen Creek filing number 8 developmental proposal. And this motion will be to include the 5 resolutions and 1 ordinance. And as pointed out this weekend, that we will then begin our debate about the merit of the combined resolution. So is there a motion to deliberate on the Dillon Point, Aspen Creek filing number 8 development proposal to include the 5 resolutions and 1 ordinance? Mayor Pro Tem Castriotto.
So moved.
Councilmember Lindstedt.
Second.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and begin the discussion on the 5 resolutions and the and the ordinance together. Council will get 5 minutes for the purposes of their discussion, their comments, and I'm going to ask who would like to go first. Councilmember Tessier.
You guys hear me?
Yes. Loud and clear.
Hallelujah. Okay. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this opportunity. Great questions tonight from council members. I really appreciate all the efforts. Thank you for the presenters for being here. My comments I'll start with the future of development and neighborhoods are changing. We need to find ways to bridge the past with the future. We need to think holistically and get out of our own bubbles of single neighborhoods when we think of Broomfield. Whether or not you have a metro district, that doesn't mean others will not want that for themselves. HOAs have their fair share of issues, and there are people who live with them and without them. This is important to remember when we discuss housing options for all, to appease all types of people's tastes, because variety is the spice of life. We also appoint boards and commissions, volunteers in the community who are professionals in that area, and we charge them with recommending approval or not. The boards and commissions who looked at this project recommended approval. Moreover, all of the partners in the community who are involved with housing have recommended approval for this project. It's interesting that we can find 27 things wrong with current policies in place surrounding other issues, like oil and gas, for example, and we call these policies outdated. I think the same thing is happening here. For the future of development of Broomfield and to ensure housing for all, we need to absolutely re-envision what our backyards are going to look like across all of Broomfield. For residents who have opposed this, you may not see yourselves as participating in NIMBY and may in fact take offense with this statement. And I'm respectfully asking you, would you be here tonight if this project was not in your backyard? There is something called the vocal minority, and we have to keep this into account. We have to keep the silent majority who have approved inclusionary housing, who have recommended, who see that inclusionary zoning is important for every single ward. With regard to the petition that was signed, I think there are a lot of swift communications that can take place on social media, particularly next door. I know how toxic social media can be, and I know that in issues surrounding just about everything that comes in front of council, it's easy to sometimes demonize the opposition, and it's easier to make the opposition your enemy and less human to win an argument. And again, those 500 people are in the vocal minority of Broomfield. Broomfield has a lot of work to do with regard to community outreach and education surrounding housing. This is my takeaway. The 7 years that I've been on council, making headway with regard to housing options for all. I'm kind of baffled here tonight. This is the perfect opportunity. If not now, when? For my fellow council members who ran on housing as part of your platform, this is your chance. We've heard from many housing experts in the community that this is the future of housing and have been solicited to approve this development. This is for the good of all Broomfield, and I hope that you all vote yes with me on this project. I'm voting yes because this not only addresses just about every single one of our council priorities that we set last week, it is in alignment with the boards and commission's recommendations, and it is a very unique opportunity for this parcel of land. Thank you for your time.
Oh. Councilmember Lim.
In the January 26th memo summary that staff gave us, it says that there are 23 variances required for this project. 23 variances are unprecedented and will create instability, uncertainty with our residents and our developers. I am not sure what action council anticipates next. Are the council members who are going to vote to approve 23 variances still going to protest one sign variances, which is frequently done? What precedent will approving 23 variances set for an industrial park in the Northeast where the developer will most likely have less than 23 variances because of established zoning. The petition that 568 people signed from across Broomfield stated that they expected there to be density in this area. They appreciated that there was a possibility that there would be development. They accept that. They do not accept that there is going to be 23 variances approved by council as part of this project. I think the operation of the Metropolitan District has been questioned this evening. It's based on promises, and we have no verification that these promises will be kept to enforce covenant agreements. We received no justification, financial justification this evening for the need for the height variance. Whether or not the applicant intended to disclose proprietary information or not, they were asked to provide financial justification, and they agreed to provide financial justification. And they failed in that agreement to provide any kind of expenses or spreadsheet that provided a clear financial justification. So I will be voting against this project. There was no justification provided for the main height variance, and there are 22 others that would have to be voted on and neglected as part of the PUD. Thank you.
Councilmember Law Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm actually going to leave my camera off. I'm a little under the weather this evening, but I do have a lot of thoughts, and I am very cognizant of the emotion of the neighborhood. I've been where you are. That's why I got into politics, to tell you the truth. And the mayor perhaps remembers that. I see him smiling wryly.
He remembers it.
Yeah. So I've been where you are, and I remember the feelings. So I want to acknowledge that. I've thought about this a lot in the intervening week or thereabouts, and I think I've organized my thoughts in kind of a big picture checklist. First of all, I want to talk about the tension / history between the landowner and the neighborhood to the south, because I think that is coloring a lot of discussions. From my point of view, as a city council member, that's irrelevant. We are charged with making decisions based on objective land use criteria, and I believe that we are charged with applying those criteria evenly, regardless of existing tensions in the neighborhood. With regard to the density, I really appreciate Councilmember Tessier's comments. Certainly, the needs of Broomfield and the vision of what housing must look like going forward have changed since the original PUD on this property was approved. And I want to point out that if this plan were proposed on a piece of property 5 miles from any existing homes, I don't believe there'd be any objections. I think that we would have approved it by now, and they'd be moving dirt. But it's as members of the public, especially former housing advisory committee member Mr. Manley pointed out, market-based solutions for affordable and attainable housing need density. So that's a trade-off that I have to think about. Are we willing to have the increased density at this location, even though it means, quite frankly, discomfiting some people who've perhaps gotten used to having that vacant ground there. And I would actually put my comments regarding how the height with the exact same comments as density. To me, they go hand in hand. You have to have the height, you have to have the density in order to get closer to a market-based solution for attainable and affordable housing. So then I come to the discussions about the Metro District versus HOA and the party wall. And as far as I can see, all of these are legal constructs that are meant to address specific problems in a development or specific issues, specific ways of doing things. And all of these constructs, the Metro District versus HOA, party wall, et cetera, have succeeded or failed elsewhere. And I think at this point, the guardrails that have been put in place legally are there. I'm not qualified to say whether the Metro District is that this is a good one or not, but I think the best defense against things going bad is for the people who live there to keep an eye on it, serve on the Metro District board, serve on, keep an eye on it. So again, I think that's a trade-off. I'm not explaining myself very well, but I think that's a trade-off that we have to be willing to make. With regards to the number of variances requested, I would also point out that asking for a lot of variances can mean either that the applicant is asking for a lot of changes, or it can mean that needs have changed since the original standards were put in place. And again, I think that clearly Bloomfield's needs and the country's needs are changing. So I'm willing to go with, I think, most of the variances. As I noted last time, for me, the big issue here, and it didn't make the list of 4 issues that were discussed by the public and that we asked for more information on, because I don't think there was more information to be had. For me, the big issue is the traffic. I down here in Ward 1, we have 2 specific situations that I think are in need of addressing, but we don't have a good way of doing that now. Where Willow Run Parkway, if you want to make a left turn onto Midway, you take your life in your hands, and then there is no easy way to go from Brandywine, South Brandywine, if you want to make a left turn on Lowell, same thing. And that one actually
wrap up.
Okay, all right. I cannot agree to dumping an entire new subdivision's worth of traffic onto Aspen or 144th. So, and Ms. Rogers perhaps can advise me on this, but if this is the right time for me to make an amended resolution, is this the right time, Ms. Rogers?
Thanks. I actually think Councilmember Law Evans, if you could pitch your idea for your amendment, and then when we get into the specific vote on the resolution that would be amended, then we can actually do the vote on the amendment. That might be the easiest at this point.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you. So the one thing that I can't get past is the traffic. So here's my pitch is I would like to require the developer to install a traffic light at the intersection of Aspen Street and whatever the access road is going to be named into the new development, because I think otherwise there is no signalized intersection to get out of or into this new development. And that's just, I cannot agree to setting up another problem such as Willow Run Parkway or the south part of Brandywine up here. So that's my pitch. Those are my comments. When the appropriate time comes, I will make an amended motion.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lindstedt.
Thank you, Mayor, and I will be brief. I think everybody here knows how I feel about this development. For me, it comes down to our council priorities, and we approved affordable housing, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and sustainability as some of our top priorities. And without a doubt, this development hits all of those needs. You know, this is the first major development that has in the ground affordable housing and a diversity of price points. And most importantly, that affordable housing doesn't look different than the rest of the neighborhood. I've heard a lot of comments tonight or at the last meeting and tonight from folks who think, oh, we should follow the original PUD and have, you know, affordable housing, but that doesn't work. You know, you stigmatize people by adding affordable housing that doesn't match the neighborhoods. So that's what makes this project so incredible, is it provides that diversity of housing, and it hits our needs, and, you know, has the affordable units there within the context of the neighborhood. And that's incredibly important. And we can't, if this council is serious about affordable housing, we can't be shooting down one of the first major developments that's going to bring that. And, you know, just it's a fact that density helps create affordability with the cost of land, with the cost of construction. It's the truth. You know, that's why, you know, following a 1994 PUD isn't going to work to accomplish the goals and priorities of this city council. You know, diversity, equity, inclusion. We need affordability to get diversity. You can't. There's a long history of unaffordable, you know, developments keeping certain people out, and I think that it folds right into this type of decision. You know, so it's this development hits our priorities as a city council. Density is more sustainable. You know, that height is really, really important to get that density, to lower those costs, and to make the development more sustainable. And it helps provide us, you know, with more open space ultimately by having more density in certain areas. And it's, you know, I can't think of a better project to suit our council goals. In regards to the variances, Aspen Creek had 14 variances, including a height variance from the existing R1 zoning. The downtown is going to have, I would imagine, something similar in the number of variances. We're looking at variances all over the community, and it's a fact. You know, this is the future of development, and if we care about these priorities, we have to accept variances. You can't have it all both ways. You just can't. If you want your affordable housing to match your neighborhood, you can't. So I think this is a terrific development. I think if we reject this, we're going to be making a huge mistake for the future of our community. And I guess my closing two comments are, you know, we can make amendments. So if people have specific changes they want to make to the Metro District, run the amendment. If, you know, Councilmember Jezierski, for instance, wants to change the height, it sounds like the developer was very open to maybe lowering those pitches and, you know, maybe taking an aggregate number of inches or feet off of some of those other rooms to lower that height slightly. If that is the breaking point on a yes vote, I would encourage my colleagues to bring forward those amendments so that you can get to yes, because this development hits our priorities as a city council. And I think those priorities matter. So do what you can to get to yes, so that we can make Broomfield a more affordable, inclusive, and sustainable community overall. That's all I have for now, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson?
Thank you. This project will have to meet the inclusionary housing ordinance regardless. I agree with Councilmember Lim that the approval of 23 variances, including the height variance to allow 44-foot building heights where all parties involved have been aware of that 33-foot existing height limit, could set a precedent for more of the same. These requests for high impact variances need to be addressed sooner in the process. And this is not the first time this has been brought up. This has been a repeated concern of this community. I do not see the financial justification when there's a profit margin on all of the styles except the affordable units. When the majority of an impacted community speaks out in opposition to such a height variance or any other variance, I would not consider this a vocal minority. Residents are going to be more involved when it more directly impacts their community, and there's no need to bring oil and gas into every discussion. We are discussing residential development here. This is not oil and gas. We have plans for high density along with bus rapid transit along Highway 7 and in other communities. with vast numbers of affordable units. We're talking about 32 here and over 1,000 in baseline, where we're planning for that density. This just isn't the area that we need to put this. So this isn't against affordable housing. There is plenty of support for it. This is really about that history with this height. So that is my thoughts. Thank you.
Councilmember Groom.
Thank you very much. I just want to start off with saying thank you to everybody involved, our citizens for hanging in there for 2 years and staying strong and staying committed to the process, and for the developer for doing the same. Definitely, I'm in line with keeping with the master plan. I've never liked the infield building concept. It puts a lot of pressure on the infrastructure and the road structure. Just like Councilmember Law Evans said, we've got to really be careful about how we're going to get in and out of our neighborhoods in the future. And right now, that neighborhood, as we've heard for 2 years, it's really difficult to maneuver around. So the density part is very concerning. The height for me is one of the major decision factors. So I find it really hard to believe that adding a fancy rooftop that has 0 living space contributes to affordable housing. So I hear a lot of people, a lot of my fellow council members saying that that having the additional height is something that adds to density and contributes to the affordable housing in Broomfield, and I don't see how that does. So because of those things, I am a no. And also, I have to say, since day one, the people, not only in the Aspen Creek neighborhood, but all the surrounding neighborhoods, have come out in hordes, in numbers that have been greater than our oil and gas feedback. I was shocked with when we had in-person council, it would not only fill the council hall, but the hall outside of it. So I have to say, there is definitely some public opinions that we do need to listen to, and we do need to allow public comment to shape our community. And the inconsistencies of the 23 variances, when we had a developer present with 0 variances, and we did listen to the community and we did listen to the residents and how they want to shape their neighborhoods, I think I'm kind of confused. On one project we listen and the other project we don't. So I think we should listen to public comment and how the people want their communities shaped. So I do want to say, I do have the utmost respect for Councilmember Tessier and the mayor, but I am very disheartened with name calling of our public and our citizens, NIMBYs. Talk about toxic name calling. It is very disappointing. I've got friends in that neighborhood. I've got friends calling in. I have family. Nobody that I've ever known has an issue with affordable housing in Broomfield. These are community members across the city that do want affordable housing in Broomfield. It has nothing to do with being in their 32 units in their backyard. And so I do take it offensively that because I'm against this, I'm not a NIMBY, and neither are these neighbors. Neither are the people at Aspen Creek. They truly have some valued opinions in how to shape their backyard. And it's not because of affordable housing. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if everybody does this, but I wake up in the morning and check my email. And one of the first emails that came through was from a woman who sent us a video. And it was about how she's lived here her whole life. And her family is now facing homelessness because of the pandemic. and there is no affordable housing stock available. And we as a council, we said we welcomed affordable housing developments. We gave our developers an outline on what to follow. And I do respect the community input, but you can't compare a development that wanted to put an industrial building next to homes to this, because that wasn't compatible with a residential neighborhood. This is adding residential to a residential neighborhood. So let's not get that conflated. The variances keep coming up, and it is kind of like oil and gas regulations because those were out of date. They go back to a time when oil and gas was a priority. It was a state interest, and we couldn't stop it. So that's why the wells were allowed to be 500 feet from homes. We know better, we do better. And our codes need to be updated to reflect our new vision and to reflect the reality that because we've land banked all this open space, which everybody loves, there's no place else to go but up. We've done this to ourselves. So now, in order to accommodate the huge gap in housing equity that Broomfield is facing, we need to be flexible. The variances, 16 of them are setbacks, little setbacks, because in order to get an affordable home, you need a smaller lot, you need a smaller home. It's just logic. These aren't egregious setbacks, variances. So I guess this is just the first of many projects, and some will be infill, that are coming to Broomfield. There's 11 new multifamily projects in the pipeline. So this is just the first. So my hope is that, we actually back the goals that we said we would. And that does require being flexible. And like many projects that I've seen that originally were so opposed in this neighborhood, one example, the McKay Bike Park. That drew so much community pushback because people didn't want to hear the people playing or the traffic issues and all types of what ifs. And I keep hearing the what ifs. Now that park is the jewel of my neighborhood. So I think a lot of people fear what they don't know, but in the end, it turns out to be a really cool thing. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Councilmember Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to thank the continued engagement on this project over the years, from the residents, from the developer, from council. When we talk about compromise, we've heard from many residents engaged in this project. They have looked at the traffic, they've looked at flooding, they've looked at open space, and they've looked at density. There have been many compromises on many sides, and not just from the developer. Many of these Aspen Creek residents have accepted the increased density and even the deed restricted housing. They're in favor of these things. The Metro District's conversation, unfortunately, those are going to be used more often for development, and it will be imperative for Broomfield and the City Council to ensure that there are appropriate guardrails to ensure protection of the city and the future residents. We need to ensure the Metro District is just using this mechanism to pay for infrastructure, not to fund their own pockets. This project still contains a commercial lot, which is something that no resident has asked for. Nobody has asked for the commercial lot. If anything, everybody that I've heard from has spoken against it. So why this is still being included at this point, I don't know. When we talk about 3-story townhomes, what we really mean is a 4-story townhome with a walkout deck as depicted in the applicant's presentation materials. I don't know why we're being disingenuous with calling this a 3-story townhome when it has a 4th story on it. When looking at the financials to support the 4-story townhomes, it appears the overall revenue went up dramatically from July 28th hearing to the planning document filed in August, so 1 month. With the addition of 32 deed restricted homes, the project appears to have generated much more revenue. A large majority of the homes were expected to be in the $300,000 to $400,000 price range, according to the application in July. The resubmitted application in August showed a dramatic increase in the largest percentage of homes now in the $500,000 to $600,000 price range. And these are just starting prices. The minimum revenue jumped by over $25 million. So on top of the major increase in profit for the developer in the name of affordable housing, much of the affordable housing was lost. And when the change from July to August, there were 30, this is the change, that there were 32 deed restricted homes created. As part of this, the developer will get 15% reduction in all permit fees, all other fees and use taxes, and a 10% reduction in water fees. They'll waive all reinspection fees pertaining to the attainable units. That was not included by the developer. In the end, they are requesting 101 additional units beyond what they are allowed and justifying because of affordable housing inclusion. Again, the residents of Aspen Creek acknowledge the density, but the need for height to increase the profits of the developer is not about density. It's about profit for the developer. This project hinges on the ability to build 4-story townhomes and the height variance, which is the same variance that Mr. Owita spoke against in the Aspen Creek neighborhood to the south of his property. I kind of think of karma. This variance, along with the other variances for a total of 23 variances, is too many to approve. This high number of variances suggests the project is out of character with a PUD. The project creates and does not mitigate the negative impacts on the surrounding properties, including traffic, flooding, and the height limit. The project does not protect the views of the neighboring projects, especially given the Waukee open space was purchased to protect mountain views. I'm still concerned about the flooding implications on the surrounding residents, and this project is generally not consistent with the original plans for this land. With that, I'm opposed to this project. That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Jaworski.
Thank you. I will be somewhat brief. I'm going to start by mentioning, when I first saw this project, I liked it. I thought it did have a lot of great things for Broomfield. Unlike Councilmember Schaaf, I thought the commercial parcel was actually a big benefit. Walkable communities right now are in demand. I've read articles on that, and I think that to me that was a big benefit. And as well as the varied housing and the open space and the trail connections. I thought this project did fit the needs of Broomfield, as has been discussed. The senior housing, the attainable housing, and even the townhome products that aren't necessarily attainable. They are lower priced than most single-family homes and new homes in Broomfield right now. So overall, this is a more attainable product than pretty much anything else that we'd see in Broomfield. So as Councilmember Law Evans mentioned, isolated on its own, I think this is easy to approve. And we probably wouldn't have spent 2, 3, or I don't know how many days we spent on this project so far. But unfortunately, it's not isolated, and there is a neighboring community just to the south of it that has significant concerns. And they've had expectations as to what would be, on this parcel. And unfortunately, some of these expectations are, have been, I guess some of the expectations aren't being fulfilled. And we are seeing the increased density, and of course, as we've heard tonight and heard a few times, the increased height is a big concern. So, I've been thinking about this for a while tonight, and ultimately for me, it comes down to really a balancing act. It's, do the benefits of this project to Broomfield, which I think that most people can agree on, the varied housing, do they outweigh the negatives, which would be really the expectations that are being destroyed here, and with the higher the increased heights and the increased density. So, I think that's the developer, the applicant in this case, could have made this a lot easier, at least for me. Maybe increased some of the attainable housing, maybe had less heights. It would have been a lot easier decision. On the other hand, this is not a bad product, and it would have been an easy decision for me the other way if there were no attainable housing involved, or if this was an industrial building or something that was totally out of character for the community. So, I mean, it definitely, as you're probably going to see here with the vote tonight, what's been proposed is very difficult for everyone. I think we're all sort of maybe consciously or subconsciously doing this balancing act. It's do the benefits of this project and how it benefits Broomfield, does it outweigh the negatives to the community? And for me, it is a tough one. I think ultimately I am going to be in favor of the project. I mean, I do think that what it does provide in the attainable housing, the senior housing, the lower price townhomes, as well as the commercial parcel. I think those are all benefits. I think this is going to be a good project overall. I really do feel for the residents of the community that are to the south. Ultimately, I think if this did go forward, that their fears and their concerns may not be. I guess it may not turn out as bad as they fear. I think overall this is looks like it's going to be a good project. I will push my amendment, as Councilmember Linston mentioned, to reduce the height at least a few feet. I think I heard that 42 feet was very doable by the builder. So I think that would if we could just do maybe a flat roof versus the pitched roof, that could at least provide a little relief on the height there. So I'm going to propose that, but otherwise, I think I will vote in favor of this today.
Councilmember Hinkle.
Thank you, Mayor. With this being sort of a special meeting, I might have some more questions than what I have already kind of typed out. I'm just kind of adding a little bit more here. Thank you so much to Wonderland and our staff for all of their work. I know I had a lot of questions last week, and I know that we've been trying to work diligently to kind of get to the bottom of the Metro District questions, and I've been listening to a lot of the people ask questions about that. And so I've been doing extra work in addition to council work, just researching a lot of this. And I even think that Metro Districts as a whole, we need to expect better. So I think this is sort of the beginning part of a conversation that we need to see that all of Broomfield has. But anyway, so I wanted to just thank those people who have called in tonight and have called in last week and have just been really diligent in giving feedback. With the variances, I think I feel like there's a lot of variances because of what we are expecting out of them as far as density, open spaces, and then changes to the southern end of the property. I even like I said, looked up and took a class on Metro Districts, and a lot of people didn't even know about the tiered system. So, it's been clear that Wonderland has established as being good neighbors and servants in their communities. And so when I asked about if we can have some sort of system where we can limit or cap the levy until there's representation by the homeowners, they supported that idea. So it seems like every time we've asked them to do things, they've said, yes, we can do that. Yes, we can do that. And there's only a small amount of times where they say, no, we can't. So I do support adding this mill levy cap until we have at least, majority homeowners. And I'll ask clarification here in a minute on that, Jennifer Hoffman here in a second. With the height, I went over to the property and I'm not seeing much of a difference in that area, with that small area being, less than 1% of the project. With an extra 10 feet. I'm not seeing, we're just going to have more density. I do feel that Wonderland has been bending over backward, just short of telling us their own personal books too, which we have not required of other developers. So I did want to know their internal rate of return. And I think I've got some questions. I had some answers from staff on that one already. And so I wanted to ask Jennifer Hoffman, do we have to do an amendment based on that mill levy cap then?
No, Councilmember Hinkle, they've agreed to, that was part of the presentation, that with that mill levy cap, the only time that mill levy cap will be increased is when the developer and or the attorneys are no longer part of the board and it is a resident full board.
Okay, so they even
they're not capping it. Yeah, they're not capping it in perpetuity. they're capping it until it's a resident-filled board.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. I wanted to make sure I didn't have to run an official amendment and create language for it. So I appreciate that. And that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Okay. All members of council have spoken. Let me give my comments. Finally, number 8, or excuse me, the last amendment to Aspen Creek was done. I believe I heard it in 1998, but I think I heard today it was 1994. But it's been 20 some years since we did it. At that point in time, council's priorities were different than they are today. There was a desire to have executive homes. For Interlochen as it built out, and Interlochen has been very successful, so we've achieved that. Council now has a goal of inclusive housing. It's something that I fully support on, and so of the variances that are being requested, at least my understanding, 16 of the variances that are being requested tonight are basically variances that are of density. The building height, I mean not heights, because heights is something I'm talking about separately because I view it differently. But this is lot setbacks and all the other things. So in order to go from to add the additional 100 units on, they're asking for 16 variances from the original 1998 PUD to allow that. And my basic attitude is, I've been thinking about this over the last week, is that that density itself, excluding height for a minute, the question then comes down to, by allowing that type of density, additional 100 units in there, what impact does that have on other neighborhoods, including mine? Because I'm an adjacent neighborhood to that. And so the issues really get down to traffic and they get down to schools. As far as traffic is concerned, we had a lot of people, and I guess maybe Councilmember Groom, this is where I made the NIMBY comment. Maybe it was inappropriate. Maybe I should apologize. But I heard a lot of comments about people being stacked up 20 cars on Dillon Road. And yes, cars get stacked up on Dillon Road, but as we all know, council is spending $44 million to open that up. I can't imagine that we're going to have that type of problem on Dillon Road once it's opened up. On 136, it's a problem as well, because once again, this is my number, but we're going to put a light on 136. I haven't thought about Councilmember Henkel's deals, but those are issues that are being ameliorated right now as we do that, regardless of whether this development goes in. And we have a traffic study that says the traffic's not going to be an issue. Going to the schools, the schools have a lot of transfer ins. My kids went there for 12 years. If you combine the two kids, the amount of years they went there, and last week we had somebody testify that there were trailers there. Those trailers are not there. There's been a $530 million bond issue, that was passed. There's been improvements made to the school. The school itself, and I think this has been being verified by Adams 12 and others as well, are very concerned about the loss of students. So the school district has assured us that they can handle these students. So the impact of increasing the density is something I think has been addressed, and I think we've been satisfied on. So that's something we're going forward. But I viewed height as something different, because height is something you can't mitigate. I mean, once it's there, if there's implication to that height, then you can't mitigate it. So I view it as a special category of variance that we need to look at closely. Last week, the developer said, or 2 weeks ago said that they needed that to make the affordable housing units work. And it appears there's senior housings that they wanted to work for as well. Once again, that was their comment, not mine. I wasn't asking for proprietary information. They want the height variance because they say they need the additional $135,000 per unit for these rooftop patios, which concerned me on privacy to begin with, that they want that. I didn't bring up that argument. And so I'm going to, so my comment, and I'm doing counts here, I only vote audience in case of a tie. My comment comes down to that I'm in favor of this project. I'm in favor of the density. I'm in favor of affordable housing. I'm not, if it was up to me without an amendment on height, it would be something I would be concerned about. And so I want to make sure everybody understands that I do have concerns about the height. I don't have the concerns, about the other 16 variances that are being requested. So with that stated, we will now move on. Labeled it to the vote. So Nancy's going to help me at any point in time here. Council may move for a vote on each of the resolutions and ordinances before us. Council also has the option to make a motion related to denial of the overall proposal. If council wishes to consider findings of denial, I would entertain a motion that council directs the city attorney's office to draft findings in support of denial and hold a recess for those findings to be prepared and presented to council this evening. So I presume at this point in time, Nancy, it's appropriate to ask for if there's a motion. Councilmember Law Evans?
Well, I have my amended motion. Is it
I
time?
think we need to make the original motions, and then you would amend those motions. Is that correct?
Okay, well, I will wait then.
Okay, so just so we have that covered, which resolution or ordinance would it require for her to want that light to be put in?
For Councilmember Law Evans, we are thinking it would be Resolution 2020-239.
Okay, so it's the first motion. And so then what you anticipate, if we're going to go through each one of the resolutions, that we would go ahead and we would entertain a motion. So I'll go ahead and ask, I will entertain a motion for a vote on resolution number 2020-239. Is that where we're at, Nancy?
So there's a couple options at this point because council is considering this project as a whole. So that's a motion that can be presented by one of the council members. There could also be what's called just a motion to vote on an up or down on the project. Okay. That could be one as well. And that would involve, though, directing the city attorney to make findings of fact as a quasi-judicial entity. You would direct us to make findings of fact for you based on what was said this evening on the 26th, and we bring that back to you for the official vote. So it's odd that there's two options right now. What the mayor was saying, folks, is he's going to entertain a motion either to start into the resolutions or entertain a motion to have the city attorney's office write findings of fact to support a denial.
But, you know, Ms. Rogers, I'm trying to confirm here, though we would go through resolution by resolution to vote. And so if we were going to start the voting, we would start with a motion, or do you, because my understanding is some of these motions require 2/3.
One of them does. The resolution 2020-272 requires 2/3 vote.
Okay, so you were anticipating maybe we could vote for everything but 272 at one time?
No.
Okay, so that's where I was headed. So we have two options right now. We have an option of a motion for denial or a motion for 2020-239.
Yes.
Okay, that's where I was headed.
We'll see what council member.
Okay, yeah. Mayor Pro Tem Castriano.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that resolution number 2020-239 be adopted.
Is there a second? Councilmember Lindstedt?
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion on resolution number 2020-239? I was going to go ahead and call upon Councilmember Law Evans, Councilmember Schaaf, because she wanted to make an amendment. Is that okay? Okay. Councilmember Law Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that resolution number 2020-239 be amended so that the subdivision improvement agreement provides a requirement that Aspen Street Land LLC is required to install a traffic signal stoplight at the intersection of Aspen Street and the access into the new development. And that language was from Ms. Rogers.
Okay, so is there a second? Mayor Pro Tem?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion on the amendment itself? Councilmember Jezierski.
So I guess the question I have I have an amendment as well. I'm assuming it is for this. This is the one regarding a height limitation. So I'm assuming it would be for this particular motion. Can staff confirm that?
Councilmember, it would be presented after this one is done. Right now, we're just focused on the traffic signal amendments from Councilmember Law Evans. We'll vote on that one, then we'll go back and you can introduce your amendment.
Okay, well, would this be the appropriate motion though? I mean, this particular issue, the 20.
Was 239 the one he should make his amendment on?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We
So
believe
we'll
it
call
is
upon,
staff-
yeah, Councilmember Zuska, I'll call upon you once we voted on the amendment.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Lamb.
I have a question for staff. It's my understanding that traffic lights are put in after significant traffic studies by our traffic engineer, and that, you know, if you put in a traffic light where there hasn't been a traffic study, that it could create unforeseen safety issues. I understand Councilmember Law Evans' intent here, but can we as council just say they have to put a traffic light in here without having our traffic engineer verify that it's allowed to be there?
Katie Allen is not on the line, but Anna is. Anna, do you want to field the first part of the question? Assuming that the traffic light would not go in until the development. So in other words, the traffic light wouldn't go in. Yeah, Anna, help me out on this one. And it may very well influence Councilmember Law Evans, the timing of that traffic light.
Thank you for the opportunity to jump. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, you're correct that the traffic studies include and address whether warrants have been met for traffic signals, and they're not typically installed. They aren't installed until warrants are met for the traffic signal. So often in our subdivision improvement agreements, when you're reviewing traffic signal improvements, the traffic signals will be required to be installed by a developer when warrants are met based on traffic studies or traffic analysis.
So I guess the question would be then, in a lot of our developer agreements that we're working on and reviewing right now, it's who picks up the cost of those traffic signals when warranted.
Okay. Councilmember Schaaf or Councilmember Lim, did you have other questions?
Yes, I don't think my question was answered. My question was not who picks up the cost. My question was if council is even allowed to put in this agreement now that there has to be a traffic light at that intersection when our traffic engineer has done a study and said that that intersection does not warrant a traffic light.
John, do you want to?
Sure. Councilmember Lim, this is John Hall, Deputy. We generally recommend language that references warrants. However, having discussed it here, we do believe council has the ability to require a traffic signal at this location.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is on the amendment. I recall from I guess, what was that, January hearing that I asked the question about traffic, and the answer was that the light at 136 and Aspen Street was included in our CIP project, and this was going to be moved forward regardless of this development. And so what I would like to do is to alter this. I don't know what the exact terminology will be, but instead of the developer paying, installing the light, because I think that it needs to go in before the development happens, because it's needed now. It's already on the CIP project list and it's ready to be moved forward. So what I would like to see is that the developer reimburse the city the cost of that traffic light.
So Councilmember Schaaf, let me clarify. I think Councilmember Law Evans is talking about a traffic light at a different location than 136th. And so,
okay. I missed that
That's
intersection.
correct.
Okay.
Councilmember Schaaf, the 136th and Aspen Light is scheduled to begin in about 8 weeks. Councilmember Law Evans is suggesting a traffic signal between Aspen on 136th and Dillon.
No.
Okay.
No, that's.
All right. All right. Then,
between 136 and Dillon is what you mean.
I now see that. I
Sorry,
see there's
yeah.
the intersection of Aspen Street and 142nd Avenue. So,
Yes.
I'm perplexed on this one. I haven't seen a traffic study that supports a light there. This is new and I don't support this. Sorry.
Councilmember Law Evans.
So I just wanted to clarify a couple of things, and some of them have been clarified in the ensuing discussion. But this is a different location than the traffic light that's already going in at 136th and Aspen. And my reasoning here, Councilmember Lim and Councilmember Schaaf are correct. I don't think that necessarily the warrants for this location will be met under the MUTCD. Is that the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, if I recall correctly? But as I mentioned briefly at the last meeting, I'm not sure that the standards in the MUTCD that are commonly applied are necessarily what is best for Broomfield anymore. And the two instances, again, that I'll cite are Willow Run Parkway and Midway and South Brandywine and Lowell. Those are just terrible intersections down here in Ward 1. So I don't know if the warrants are met. That's not my question or my supposition here. I just think that there needs to be a signalized intersection to get in or out of this development, period. So that's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the amendment and only the amendment? Councilmember Lindstedt.
Thank you, Mary. I just wanted to ask one question of the developer, and that's if this amendment is the difference between this being approved or not. Is this financially viable to add a traffic light? I assume so, but I just figured maybe we should ask here before passing this.
The answer is yes. We would definitely do it. We did not have a signal there because it was not requested by staff previously. So whatever is requested by staff, we would move forward with.
Great. I support the amendment.
Councilmember Anderson.
I have two questions. The first one is, so if we add the cost of the light, is that ultimately, who pays for that? Is that ultimately added into the Metro District cost? Like, is that just part of the whole project so that the neighborhood then pays for that traffic light? And is that significant? Because that's a question of, do they want to, if that's the case, then do they want to pay more for that light?
The Metro District funds are already capped, and so adding the light in wouldn't change the amount of reimbursement from the Metro District.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a question related to this procedure as we do these amendments. If we vote yes on the amendment, can you still vote no on the overall? I just want to make sure we understand what we're voting on as we move forward. Thank you.
Yeah, we're voting only on the amendment for the light, and then that doesn't bind you to vote in favor of 239.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? I will have the clerk call the roll, on voting in favor of the amendment proposed by Councilmember Law Evans to put a light on Aspen Street, accommodating traffic to and from the development onto Aspen Street.
Anderson,
Yes.
Castriata,
Yes.
Broom.
No.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that. No, okay. Hinkle,
Yes.
Jaworski,
Yes.
Law Evans,
Yes.
Lim,
No.
Lindstedt,
Yes.
Schaaf,
No.
Tessier.
Yes.
Yep,
So I have it passing, the amendment passes 7-3, correct?
Correct.
Okay, we'll go back to resolution 2020-239, and I will I'll call upon Councilmember Jazierski, who wants to make an amendment.
Thank you, Mayor. So yeah, I would like to amend 2020-239. And I'm not sure the language, so staff, you're going to have to help me on this, but as I was discussing my question, I want to cap the max height of the structure to 42 feet. So it's a few feet shorter than what they proposed, but they did indicate in the questioning that they could do 42 feet. So I want to make sure we're not falling in any loopholes or some discussions as to what's constitutes the top of the structure. But I want to make sure that, you know, the very tippy top of the outdoor balcony area stairwell doesn't exceed 42 feet. However that needs to be worded. I think you understand my intent, or at least I hope you do.
Councilmember Jazierski, I'm going to send you something in chat. I'm utilizing the chat now on these amendments because I want to make sure we get the language right. If you can check that language, if it's what you're going for, I can send that to all of council and then we can start the discussion.
Yeah, I think that is my intent. As long as when we're saying building heights not to exceed 42 feet, that includes the top of the stairwell on the balconies.
John, would it?
Didn't hear him when he said.
That would be our understanding, Councilmember.
Okay, I just want to make sure because I know there was a comment from I don't know if it was Colby or Ryan that building heights didn't apply to the balconies, but if you understand my intent, make sure that that's, and I think the applicants here understand the intent of this as well. So we're okay with that, and then should I go with the language you proposed?
Sorry, yes, Councilmember, and we included it, and the general understanding is that when you were saying here, and I put it in the chat for everyone, to not exceed 42 feet, that's everything. Okay. Everything.
I'll make it official that I move that resolution 2020-239 be amended to require the applicant to revise the SDP and the PUD to limit roofs for 3-story townhomes to flat roofs and reduce the building height for the 3-story townhomes to not exceed 42 feet.
Councilmember Law Evans,
Second.
is there any discussion? Councilmember Tessier?
Do we have to say flat roof? Can't they decide what roof they want?
Yes, I mean, it just couldn't exceed 42. Is that, John, are you?
Yeah, Councilman Jazierski, does it have to be a flat roof or can it just?
You know, I'm okay if it doesn't exceed 42. Just my understanding that they couldn't do a pitched roof at 42.
Well, but we'll give them that choice.
That's fine. You could take the flat roof part out of it.
So we have a friendly amendment to the amendment by the amender?
That's fine.
Okay. Councilmember Henkel?
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, we've been having like height issues up in Wilcox. So I just want to make sure that when we're talking about height, we've been talking about like in Wilcox, they've been upset about height, meaning like the mean of all of the different heights of all the different types of roofs that they have on their houses. So they actually had like a roof over here that's a certain height and a roof over here that's a certain height that's over their stairwell. And they took the mean of the mean. So I want to make sure that if we're talking about height, we're talking about maximum height that the building can attain and not the mean of the heights that we're dealing with in Wilcox on these emails that we're going over right now.
Yes, yeah. And
Anna, could you field that question, please?
And are you
Councilmember Henkel, I'm happy to answer that question for you. In the Wilcox subdivision, the measurement for height is required to go to the mean between the eaves and the ridges. It's one of the only areas in Broomfield where we measure height in that way. In all of the rest of the areas, including PUD districts, which this would be located in, we measure to the highest point on the roof structure. And so that will be consistent here with what we've discussed previously.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that that was clear because I don't want any more misunderstandings about height of houses. Thank you.
Okay, so any other discussion on the amendment proposed by Councilmember Jezierski that that the height be limited to not exceed 42 feet? Any other comments? Then I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Castriata,
Yes.
Groom,
No.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Jezierski,
Yes.
Law Evans,
Yes.
Lim,
No.
Lindstedt,
Yes.
Schaaf,
Yes.
Tessier,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
So I have it as passing 8-2. So now we have two amendments. So we have two amendments. So now let's go to the original 2020-239. Is there further discussion on 2020-239 as amended? Okay, I'll go ahead and will you read the title for 2020-239 again for me?
Resolution number 2020-239, authorizing and approving the 7th Amendment to the 2016 Comprehensive Plan Land Use Map, PUD Plan Amendment, Final Plat, Site Development Plan, and Subdivision Improvement Agreement for Dillon Point, Aspen Creek, filing number 8.
Okay, I'll go to, will the clerk please call the roll?
Groom,
No.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Jezierski,
Yes.
Law Evans,
Yes.
Lim,
No.
Lindstedt,
Yes.
Schaaf,
No.
Tessier,
Yes.
Anderson,
No.
Castriata,
Yes.
So it passes 6-4. We'll move on to resolution 2020-240. And I want to go ahead and just ask that since we read it before, could you please read it by title?
Resolution 2020-240, approving the First Amendment to Service Plan for Aspen Street Metropolitan District and providing other details in connection therewith.
And this requires just a majority vote, Ms. Rogers, or?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any discussion is there a motion? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that resolution number 2020-240 be adopted.
Councilmember Lindstedt?
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion on resolution number 2020-240? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Hinkle,
Yes.
Jezierski,
Yes.
Law Evans,
Yes.
Lim,
No.
Lindstedt,
Yes.
Schaaf,
No.
Tessier,
Yes.
Anderson,
No.
Castriata,
Yes.
Broom.
No.
Okay, it passes 6-4. Next is council's vote of proposed resolution number 2020-241. I'm going to ask that one be read by title.
Resolution number 2020-241, approving a utility easement grant to Aspen Street Land LLC to use and occupy city-owned open space on a portion of the Wotage open space.
Watke. Watke. So, is there a motion? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that resolution number 2020-241 be adopted.
Councilmember Tessier.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion or further discussion on 2020-241? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Jezierski,
Yes.
Law Evans,
Yes.
Lim,
No.
Lindstedt,
Yes.
Schaff,
No.
Tessier,
Yes.
Anderson,
No.
Castriata,
Yes.
Broom,
No.
Hinkle.
Yes.
It passes 6-4. Let's go with resolution number 2020-257. Would you please read it by title for me?
Resolution number 2020-257, authorizing and approving a memorandum of understanding regarding attainable housing for Dillon Point, Aspen Creek filing number 8.
Is there a motion? Councilmember Tessier,
So moved.
is there a second? Councilmember Lindstedt?
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion on 2020-257? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Law Evans,
Yes.
Lim,
No.
Lindstedt,
Yes.
Schaff,
Yes.
Tessier,
Yes.
Anderson,
No.
Castriata,
Yes.
Broom,
No.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Jezierski.
Yes.
So do I have that as, what's the vote on that?
7-3.
7-3, it passes 7-3. So let's read by title, resolution number 2020-272.
Resolution number 2020-272, authorizing and approving an intergovernmental agreement by and between the City and County of Broomfield and Aspen Street Metropolitan District.
Okay, does this require, so this requires a vote of 7. Councilmember Castriata.
I move that resolution number 2020-272 be adopted.
Councilmember Henkel.
Second.
Is there any further discussion on resolution number 2020-272? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Lim,
No.
Lindstedt,
Yes.
Schaff,
No.
Tessier,
Yes.
Anderson,
No.
Castriata,
Yes.
Groom,
No.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Jaworski,
Yes.
Law Evans.
Yes.
So my count is that it fails on a vote of 6-4. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so it fails on a count of 6-4. Let's go to ordinance number 2142. Will the clerk please read proposed ordinance number 2142 by title?
Ordinance number 2142, authorizing and approving a vested property rights agreement for Aspen Creek filing number 8 and designating the vested property rights agreement, the Aspen Creek PUD Plan Amendment, 4th Amendment, the Aspen Creek filing number 8 final plat, the Aspen Creek filing number 8 site development plan, and the Aspen Creek filing number 8 subdivision improvement agreement as site-specific development plans with extended vested property rights pursuant to 24-68-1042 CRS and Chapter 16-40 BMC. First reading.
Is there a motion? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that ordinance number 2142 be adopted on first reading and ordered published in full, and that a public hearing and second reading of the ordinance be held on March 16th, 2021 at 6 p.m. as allowed by City Council procedures and rules of order.
Councilmember Tessier,
Second.
is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Lindstedt,
Yes.
Schaff,
No.
Tessier,
Yes.
Anderson,
No.
Castriata,
Yes.
Groom,
No.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Jaworski,
Yes.
Law Evans,
Yes.
Lim.
No.
So it passes 6-4. Unless I'm advised otherwise, that concludes the items on this evening's special meeting agenda. Is there any other business to come before the council? And
Mr. Mayor, question. This is Councilmember Law Evans. Since
yes,
5 of them passed, but the one failed, what happens next?
I don't think we can determine that tonight. I think there's good. It will create concern. I don't know if you want to address that, Ms. Rogers, or if we need to let the applicant decide what this means to him.
The latter, Mayor, thank you.
So Ms. Evans, you've asked a very good question, and it's the applicant needs to decide what they're going to do. So
Fair enough. Thank you, sir.
yeah, and I mean, I don't want to provide commentary, but the fact that it failed is significant, and it will, and it will require the applicant to. Well, we'll see what happens next. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess this question is for our attorneys. Is this still in a quasi-judicial status because we just scheduled a second reading on March 16th?
Oh, good question.
Hold on for a second. You are out of the quasi-judicial function now. What you have to do in the ordinance at the second reading is a legislative function, not part of your quasi-judicial hearing function.
Thank you for that question, Mayor Pro Tem. So I'm going to go ahead and say there's no further business, and the special meeting is adjourned.